I call Westminster regular council meeting on Monday, October 15th to order at this time, and we will now take a silent moment of personal reflection. As a reminder, all members of council are obligated to declare a conflict of interest or a pecuniary interest as per section 133 of the Westminster Charter regarding any item on this agenda. I'll now call on additions and deletions to the agenda. And I would like to add one myself as 11.1 under any other matters. It would be gifts received pursuant to the ethical governance policy 5.9. Then to council for direction on the amended agenda. Councilor Buckingham.
That the agenda dated October 15th, 2018 be approved with the amendment.
Seconder, Councilor Tycha. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to item number 4, I'll look at council direction regarding the previous minutes. Councilor Buckingham.
That the regular council minutes dated September 24th, 2018 be approved.
Seconder, Councilor Monroe. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to agenda item number 5, business arising from the minutes. Not seeing any noted. At this time, number 6, public presentations. I don't believe there's any public presentations. Item number 7 is the public hearing that's scheduled for 2 p.m. So we'll move on the agenda on to item number 8. Under the agenda, I see 8.3, Office of the City Clerk. Look for the city manager to the city clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The item you have before you today is the council approved policy number 13402, the cannabis fee policy. This policy is needed to direct cannabis retail business license fees. Bylaw number 11-2018, the business license bylaw received the third and final reading on June 11th, 2018. The bylaw brought forward a new fee for cannabis retailers. The draft policy is responsible for managing how the monies collected from that fee are used or distributed. The policy is complementary to policy number 15-2017, the tobacco reduction grant policy, and is pursuant to section 15.3C1I of the Westminster Charter. On September 17, 2018, the committee recommended the policy change to allocate the funds collected to be used in the following priority: to offset policing and public safety costs associated with this, and then towards policing and public safety capital equipment purchases relating to cannabis, and finally any amending or remaining funds to be allocated to community groups. The policy has been updated to reflect Council's wishes in this regard, and Council's options are that Council approved policy 134-02, the cannabis fee policy, or the Council make changes to the cannabis fee policy and approves policy number 134-02, the cannabis fee policy is amended, or the Council not approve the policy and send it back to administration. Your governance implications are that this new policy is in response to the cannabis retailer fee bylaw 11-2018, the business license bylaw, and the financial implications are that funds collected will be used as directed in the policy. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, City Clerk. Questions or comments regarding this proposed policy? Councilor Tycha.
I think the changes reflect the discussion we had on it. The only thing I would add, I guess, is that as we look at responsibility and then 8.1 City Council should review and approve all policies, certainly at AU and maybe heard from the Premier and the Minister that they would be looking at forwarding some dollars to us and sharing. And so I guess keeping in mind that as those dollars flow from the province, we should keep in mind that it will have an impact certainly in this area as well.
I think the clerk can update us on that.
Today at a news conference, the province did announce $11.2 million in the Cannabis Transition Fund. How that money is going to be distributed or where we're not clear on that point yet, and we'll wait for that information from the province.
I guess my comment, Your Worship, is that if, the funds are there to offset our expenses. I think one of the things we heard from the president of AUMA is for us to keep a record of our additional costs that we may have. And so if we're, as we look at those, I guess what I want to be able to do is for us to ensure that we don't keep all the money in operational expenditures and have some money left over for groups that are going to spend some time in education and awareness. Because I think that's a very important priority as well.
Absolutely agree with you. Any other comments? I think that Wednesday will be a historical day in Canada, and it's also going to change a lot of things. We've been through this discussion for months as this council dealing with bylaws. We know there's going to be some additional costs. The city will be tracking those, and I believe we started that already, as well as we have equipment purchases, and we're still waiting for a recommendation from the RCMP and the Attorney General of Canada before we move forward on that. So there will be some additional costs, but I agree with you, Councillor. I think there's no question that prevention is worth a pound of cure in this case, and we definitely need to help that along, and that's what the intention of that whole licensing with the fee was, not simply to become a cash cow or a grab from the businesses that are going into the business. So I think that's where we want to direct it, and with this policy, this will give us a good start, and we'll take it from there. Councillor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the policy and just say, the way it ended up, for the information we have right now, that's for sure, like as far as the funding, it really depends on how much will be coming our way, but I think that this really is kind of what I had in terms of a vision for what the funds ought to be used for, so I think it's a good policy. Obviously, I think Councillor Diachuk makes a great point that we should just to make sure that we're really tracking the revenues from cannabis and applying them against the expenses in this area, so that if there is any opportunity to have additional engagement in public safety type of items later on with other community groups, that we take advantage of that. But I am very much in favor of this policy. Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we're talking about equipment to enforce the use of cannabis, if I heard it correctly, about 3 weeks ago, the police chief, City of Edmonton, said they only bought one machine because they want to see if it works before they buy more than one machine. And also, if I got it correct, there's only 4 in the province right now. Now that could have changed in the last 3 weeks, but I just don't know if, I guess my point is, there must be concerns if they even work, if everybody's choking up on purchasing the equipment. So, thank you.
I think your comments are well noted, Councillor. I don't know about the 4 machines, but there are questions. The machine does work, but it doesn't like below 0. And we know that in our country, as we've recently experienced, it's very easy to slip these below 0. So I think we'll wait patiently for some direction from people that are much more informed, as well as the knowledge that's there, that we can expect to see something. Something will come forward where there's people having a demand. Someone will step forward in the industry. It will happen. We don't know. Councillor Diachuk.
My biggest fear is that, the discussions with Bill Blair and an attorney for Canopy, Grow, and a research doctor, I think it was last time at CBC, a lot of discussions where, in particular, on police and people who are in safety positions, there was what is you need to be fit for duty. And fit for duty is right now in Vancouver, they said you need to show up fit for duty, and whereas other police departments have said you can't consume any cannabis 28 days prior, let's say 14 days prior. And so what I'm hoping, I guess, is that as our police become involved in, and I'm sure they will, finding people that are consuming it illegally in the wrong spot, and perhaps not impaired, or they are impaired by it. I do know there are people waiting in line at this point to want to challenge it. At least that was kind of the fervor that I sensed in some of the discussions in the park yesterday, as well as others. Because being fit for duty, the THC, the active ingredient, tends to stay in your fat cells, and if you're like me, you have a lot of space to hold on to things. And if you're tested, they're saying that 3 to 4 hours later, the next day you should be ready to go. When you consume alcohol, it tends to be gone, 24 hours, and away you go. You can be relatively safe and not really be fit for duty, so to speak. But this is different because the lag is a long time in your body, and especially if you have those cells that will hang on to it. So I think they're going to be, they're ready despite a divergence of different police forces across Canada taking different positions. I'm just hoping that none of our officers and our legal people will be involved in it because my suspicion is there will be some huge costs in that area too.
Absolutely. There's a lot to be seen after Wednesday. Councilor Buckman.
Thank you, Worship. Just to kind of echo Councilor Datch's comments, I think you and I were in the same group at the AUMA there, and you say 11 million is what they announced?
11.2.
I think you're going to hear from the AUMA by the end of the day that that's nothing when it comes down to what they're looking for. So they asked every municipality in the province to track all those costs so that we can then turn around and advocate to get some of it back. So I think that's just going to be a drop in the bucket for now. How do you put 5 million, 10 million, 11.2 million forward to a problem you don't know what it costs? You know, we'll hear more about this, but yeah, just to echo those comments, make sure we track this stuff because it's not going to be enough.
Any other questions or comments? I'll look for direction on 8.3.1 to what the council wishes. Councilor Thorson.
I move the council approves policy number 134-02, the cannabis fee policy.
Seconder. Councilor Dijak. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 8.3.2. To the city manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present 8.3.2, the Air Cadet 186 Squadron Property Tax Cancellation Request. I'll ask Scott Party from Assessment and Taxation to come forward.
Worship and Council. The subject matter is Lloydminster Air Cadet Property Tax Cancellation Request. The recommendation is the council deny the request for property tax cancellation from Lloydminster Air Cadet 186 Squadron Inc. under Lloydminster Charter Section 295. The issues the City of Lloydminster has received attached to the request for Lloydminster Air Cadet 186 Squadron Inc. in regards to cancellation of our 2018 property tax and payments. And just to give some background, in 2016, the Lloydminster Air Cadet Squadron 186 Squadron Inc. submitted an application for exemption, but was not taken to council for approval. However, the organization continued to receive that exemption approved by council on the prior application. Letters were sent out on September 26, 2017 to the organization, along with all other nonprofit organizations that had current property tax exemptions, advising of the requirement and deadline to submit new requests for exemptions beginning in 2018 in accordance with COPTR and the new property tax exemption for nonprofit organizations policies. Several follow-up calls were made by administration, but a new application was never submitted by the organization. Administration has now received an application for property tax exemption for 2019 going forward. This will be brought to council at a later date with the other applications. Council does have the option under Section 295 of the Lloydminster Charter, if it considers it equitable to do so, to cancel or reduce tax arrears, cancel or refund all reparative taxes, or defer the collection of taxes. No tax cancellation has ever been approved under Section 295 of the Lloydminster Charter as far as administration goes. So we have some options here for council. The first one is council approving the request of property tax cancellation for Lloydminster Air Cadet 186 Squadron Inc. under Section 295 of the Lloydminster Charter. This option potentially set a precedent enabling any nonprofit organization that didn't meet the deadline establishing copy legislation and non-profit tax exemption policy to submit a request to council for cancellation of the property taxes. Any tax cancellation of education levies would still have to be paid to the school divisions by the city. Option 2 is council approve the request of property tax cancellation for Lloydminster Air Cadet 186 Squadron Inc. under Section 295 of an alternative amount. Or 3, council deny the requested property tax cancellation for Lloydminster Air Cadet 186 Squadron Inc. This option will ensure no precedent was set for use of 295 in the Lloydminster Charter and ensure that no additional funds would have to be paid to the school divisions despite not being collected upon it. As far as budget implications, the request of property tax cancellation will result in a cancellation of $2,179.58 in municipal levies and penalties to date. Additionally, the education levy of $1,074.25 could be canceled, but cancellation would require the city to pay these funds to the school divisions. pass back to you, Your Worship, for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Bob. Questions, comments? Councilman.
I just want to confirm the next time that the nonprofit requests are coming in.
And
It was
we-
how many year period that we approved it
We
for?
approved last year for the 3-year period,
Great,
but we will bring in more forward this fall for meetings.
okay.
And this group is one of the ones that will come forward.
They will be coming
Yeah,
forward.
yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Baker.
Your Worship, if I may, I'd like to speak against this motion. And I'd also, if it's in order, to read an email I received from Councillor Glenn Pegnan. He's homesick in bed, but he asked me if I could read it, and I said I would check with you.
I have no problem with that.
May I start with his email?
Sure, please.
It says, from Glenn Pegnan, I attended the Lloydminster 186 celebration event this past summer and was very impressed with the organization and the impact they have had on the lives of hundreds of young people over the years. I know many nonprofits find it difficult to keep up on the administrative duties, especially when your operation are mostly volunteers. So I don't see how miscommunication can concur on either side. This organization has not been at our doors with hands out over the last few years, and I believe that they work hard and self-supporting, and I would support this motion, not to, it's just backwards, but it's not to support the motion of taxing. And on my own level, Your Worship, I was involved with the cadet movement over the years, way back, and this, not in Lloydminster, but for 67 years, the Air Cadet Squadron has been providing service and training to young people. I'm not sure the number of years, but it's a long time. And sometimes policies get you in trouble. You can't use common sense as an individual. If policy demands that, I guess that's the way it is. But I believe that common sense is important here and doesn't work for all issues of policy. We've got a lot of volunteers that have spent years raising kids, helping raise kids from about 12 to about 18 or 19 years old. They do it without financial assistance. They help the young people learn how to shine their boots, tie their laces, and fly airplanes. And to me, we talk about volunteerism, and I'm not blaming anyone, it's just our policy. And the cadet movement, I don't think, has changed in the last 60 years. They do the same thing they have for 60 years. So they're a month late with a written application. I don't think we should be imposing the $2,100, I stand to be corrected, $2,100 charge to the Cadet Corps because of the postponement or of the delay in not getting an application. And so therefore I'm going to be speaking fully against this motion. Thank you, Richard.
Councilor Thorson, and I'm working my way around. Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to confirm quickly, how late was the application?
The application was never received in
Okay.
2018.
Okay. And just to confirm, although it was a different, it was the SPCA last year where it did not meet the standards of Copter because of the use of the property on the vacant lot, correct?
That's correct.
Where it wasn't a certain percentage of actual not-for-profit activities occurring on it, so then we followed policy and made sure that we actually applied the property tax rate to that property.
That's correct in the SPCA's term. We did have another one, a local nonprofit that applied. They were late in the same condition, and council did turn it
Well,
down.
and that was my other question. I wanted to be sure that what's it called, Fellowship Village?
Or
No, not Fellowship Village. That's a different thing. Native Friendship Center.
That's a French.
Yes.
Native Friendship Center, same situation where it was missed, and we applied the policy and actually did not allow an exemption, and they did have to pay in that scenario. I am going to speak in favor solely, not that I don't believe that everything that Councillor Baker and Councillor Pegnan is saying is true in terms of volunteerism, but I think it would be sending the wrong message If you do apply the rules to some groups and they end up having to pay even though they were late or missed it, even though moving forward they're going to be able to do it, and you don't do it for other organizations. I just think it sends the wrong message of fairness in application of the rules if we held the different groups to different standards.
Thank you, Worship. I basically don't have to say anything now because that's pretty much what I was going to say, with the exception of if for Councillor Baker and those that are thinking a different way on this. I was curious, it doesn't say, it references penalties. How many penalties are there on top of the regular education levy of property tax in this case?
There will be a 1% penalty applied per month after June 30th.
What I was going to throw out there for consideration in the case if you wanted to look at helping was not to get rid of the property tax portion, but to perhaps we had some leeway on the penalty.
Yeah, that's Council's choice today.
As a thought, but I am with Councillor Torreson on the overall goal of making sure the single rule applies to every single organization without fail.
I'm just wondering, with the follow-up calls that were made by administration, was anyone spoken to at those times?
Each and every time, yeah.
Each and every time?
Yeah.
Do you know how many calls were made?
I think it was 3.
So they were quite aware. Okay, and also, never mind the calls, but was it also to take an ad out in the paper?
We
Was it
sent
advertised?
We sent a letter to them. That was before council last year during the process has asked us to advertise in paper and social media, and we've done that this year. Prior years, we just sent a letter and we follow up with phone calls to help them. With this group, there was some change in administration, so I think there was was lost in the shuffle, I guess we could say.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Councilor Patrick.
Flip a coin. I feel for the organization, and I feel like, somehow we're penalizing them for, as you're saying, perhaps not being organized, but I also know what it's like to get volunteers coming out and running an organization. I too attended the squadron. Again, very impressed by the presentation, the activities. You can't say a bad thing about the organization, but you are running volunteers, and often it's difficult to get people to step up and take on that role. And I feel that's kind of where they are relative to this piece, based on the information you're sharing, where they changed. So I honestly don't have I agree with comments on both sides. You have an organization that does good for the community. By the same token, you have, the next person can come in and say, geez, we lost this person and that person organization, and gosh, we're trying really hard. I guess if we were to defer, I guess I'd want to have us being perceived as being helpful and trying to be supportive of the community. And I understand the rules are in place, but I guess this is an example where if I look at the number of students that are being impacted or youth that are being impacted in the squadron, I would default and err on the side of supporting them. I hardly see how we could be punishing, ultimately we'd be punishing them for the actions of 1 or 2 volunteers. And that for me is a challenge. I know other organizations that, that are, paid their taxes in the past, and the Friendship Center did, and they had their journey, but they recognized that when they, filled the application form, they got the results. And I think, they're better served, and they're quite happy about the fact they don't have to pay taxes anymore, and they've met the requirements of their COPTER, as other organizations do. So it's a tough one, and I'd rather us be perceived as compassionate in this case and supporting the youth that are benefiting from it, and rather than punishing those that are supposed to be submitting the forms.
Well said, councillors. I've got a question for Scott. Scott, there is no way that we are able to defer or eliminate the school taxes, no matter what, if we were to, at the current
Council can choose to write off that $1,074.25 in education tax, but we will have to write a check to the school.
So we'd have to write this, and the city taxpayers would have to pay that minimum. And that's what I've been wrestling with, that the minimum cost to come out of this, for the city at 0, is that we would ask them to pay the school board tax if that was the wish of council. And that we would come out at 0, the school board taxes would be paid, COPTER would be in place for the following years, and would make them exempt, which would be an even wash, because I agree with you, Councillor Darchuk and Councillor Baker, all the comments. The organization is a great organization, it's a youth organization, we're going to penalize those youth for mistakes of potentially to a couple adults, which are volunteers, as you indicated. But at the end of the day, are we gonna do them more harm? We're gonna take away from programming. That's the sad part, is that $3,000 or whatever we do make them pay, it's gonna come out of programming. How can we do it with as little hurt to give them as much value as they possibly can? Because there's an organization that will accept anyone and everyone, it's just incredible. And, I'm wrestling with this one myself. Counselor Fleming.
You know, thanks, Your Worship. Having heard all that, I don't differentiate this from the Native Friendship Center or any other example that we've had here. It's every nonprofit group, every organization. We penalize the Native Friendship Center to the same amount. If you're calling it what you just called as a penalty that's going to take away from programming, it's identical, no matter the group. That's what I just want all of this to be, is even as humanly possible for everybody. And it may sound harsh. Doesn't matter if it's youth or the seniors or anybody in between. It has to be even. And I can't use one group or the other in more power. Saying, oh, because it's youth, we're going to do this. Well, how come we didn't do it for the seniors? How come we didn't do it for that group, for the next group? So, you know, it's a real dangerous thing to where this plan is right now, in my opinion. Very dangerous thing, because we turn around and do this. The last two groups that we didn't do this for, I can't support it.
Your Worship, just to clarify, we didn't do that for Native Friendship Center. They had inquired about applying in the past, were discouraged from applying. And when they came partway through the year, they were informed that the forms that they needed to apply for were the forms, and Scott got them the forms, and they met the requirements and were approved for the upcoming year. So it wasn't like they were penalized.
Good. So they actually did apply when we were late for last year for 17 taxes.
Okay.
They applied late and council chose not to give it to them. And then they were planned for 18, so just to clarify that.
Counselor Baker.
Thank you, Richard. Just to clarify something, Director Scott, the school tax section, could the school division write it off if they wanted to?
We're under legislation to pay it once it's levied. So if council chose to write it off here, we would still have to pay it. I don't know what the school board themselves, I don't know what their legislation
No, but if the
requires.
school board wanted to write it off, could they?
If they chose not to take it, I'm assuming they
We
could.
figure out how many students they've got. They're in the education business. They're training people every day. That's what they do for a living. If you take that $1,000 and prorate it per child that goes to school in this city, it's pretty well nothing. So my question is, could they write it off if they wanted?
I don't know the answer to that. I spoke to the province and they told me that if council wrote off the education levy, we would have to pay it.
I would argue, I have enough faith in the school board for $1,000. They'd want to see the cadets survive and keep going. That's just an opinion. It's
Yeah,
not a
I'm
commercial, that's an opinion.
I'm just giving you the answer that I know, that I was told
Yeah,
that
and that's
council would
fair.
have to pay it. So that's all I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Counselor Dorsey.
I may have already more or less said it before, but regardless of a personal connection to individual groups, one is not more important than the other. If they meet the standard of a not-for-profit and they're property owners, the standards just have to exist. I agree, it sucks. It doesn't feel good. It's the part of the job that doesn't feel good. But at the same time, you have to uniformly apply standards, otherwise they're just not standards. What's the point of having a policy if it's as simple as, well, I like this group more than the other, or I appreciate their mandate more than another's mandate, therefore we apply a different standard. Yeah, that is all.
Councilor Buckingham.
Prepared to make a motion if it's acceptable.
I am prepared to entertain a motion.
The council deny the request of property tax cancellation from the Lloydminster Air Cadet 186 Squadron 8 under the Lloydminster Charter, Section 295.
And a seconder for this motion. Seconding it?
That's to cancel the taxes.
No, that's
Option 3.
option 3.
Pardon me?
It's to cancel the request.
Which is
to
not.
cancel.
Pardon me. Sorry? No, I read that wrong.
Councilor Dorsey, second. Any further questions or comments? Not seeing any. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. Something that the Air Cadets could possibly consider is a third-party ask of our council to help them down the road. Because this, I can appreciate the feeling of council, and I think that they are an organization like any other organization. We do have third-party asks, so I'll leave that to the Air Cadets to see how they may pursue that.
I think the ask may not be needed if they just fill out the forms. There's a certain solution.
Yeah, and the forms, I believe, are filled out for going forward. It is just past the 2 o'clock hour, so we will move to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the public hearings for bylaws. We have 2 bylaws before us, and since both items are related, any person speaking to them will have comments that will refer to both items. So today, I'd like to call the to order public hearing on October 15, 2018 at 2 p.m. for the bylaw 23-2018 amendments to the municipal development plan. I'd like to note before we begin that during a public hearing, we ask that you be respectful of the views of everyone here and allow each person their time to speak without interruption. Each person wishing to speak has up to 5 minutes to make a presentation to council. If you do wish to speak, please state your name for the record and whether you are in support or opposed to the proposed bylaw. When you are finished speaking, please remain at the front as council may wish to ask you questions. All discussions of council members, city staff, and delegation shall be directed to the chairperson. Any questions brought forward by the public which are not able to be addressed during this meeting will be done so at the next council meeting. Council will not debate this matter during this hearing. The decision regarding whether or not to grant the bylaw further readings will be dealt with in the future at a public meeting hearing. I declare the public hearing for bylaw 23-2018 amendments to the Municipal Development Act open at 2:06 p.m. I would ask the city clerk to confirm whether or not this public hearing has been advertised in accordance with the applicable legislation and to summarize the purpose of this hearing.
I confirm that this public hearing has been advertised and notice has been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation. This public hearing was advertised in the Meridian Source on September 27th, 2018 and October 4th, 2018. The purpose of this public hearing is for 23-2018 being the proposed amendment to the municipal development plan.
By a show of hands, please let us know if you wish to speak to the proposed bylaw. Thank you. As a reminder, speakers have 5 minutes to address council. I will now ask if anyone wishes to speak who is opposed to the proposed bylaw. Would you please come forward to the mic? Would you please state your name for the record, ma'am?
Christine Benson.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Worship, Your Worship and member councillors. The first part of this, I'm sure you all know, the Downtown Transition Zone bylaw approved by previous mayor and council August 22nd, 2016. In calling residents on the present request for redirecting 5201 46th Street from residential to commercial, not one resident owner was aware of the 5+ block from 46th Street to 50th Street, 52nd Avenue to 53rd, had changed from residential to downtown transition zoning. 2016, at this time of our economic downturn, with many rental spaces available in the downtown area, businesses moving in to a new location or going out of business, it would seem unnecessary for our residential area to be targeted. In November 2017, 2001 46th Street was approved as a home-based business. Was council aware that the owners were not occupying the resident And if so, why was the home-based business designation approved? During the fall of 2017, both Ron and I visited the Walk on Water, and both of us separately suggested to the owner that the steps accessing the business were dangerous and there should be handrails installed for the safety of all. I suggested that if someone fell or was injured, that the business would likely be in a position to be sued. I was assured that the husband would get handrails installed. To date, there are no handrails or safety rails. As far as parking is concerned, when lands became, and this is in the past, when lands became available for the Lloydminster Clinic to purchase for parking to the east and north, our neighborhood was promised that at both locations they would provide ample parking. However, to the east, the Hearing Clinic and Family Pharmacy were built with limited and difficult parking. Then the Meridian Health Center was built and our hopes for adequate parking was dashed. We were promised parking there. However, it's a beautiful building and it's needed as well. Starting at approximately 6 a.m., many workers who work in this area take up parking spots in the residential streets of 46, 47, and the avenue, as you all know, has limited parking. Due to restricted parking, seniors are forced to take cabs to the clinic for appointments. In summary, over the past 25 years, our neighborhood has upgraded approximately 95% of the homes. Young families with children have moved into our affordable neighborhood. Many have built their forever homes and have expected our residential area to remain residential. On behalf of our neighborhood, I ask that you not approve these amendments at this time and postpone the development, postpone the development of the downtown transition zone until the downtown is fully occupied. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions of the presenter?
Question.
Councilor Gotcha.
So in the proposal, Chris, they indicated that they would be providing parking in the rear, so they would actually be increasing the parking. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Any other questions?
So just to clarify, you're saying that you were never notified that it was made into a downtown transition area? You were never notified as a homeowner that that was?
No, nobody in the neighborhood knew that. Now, it may be the neighborhood's fault, but when it was first advertised, it was summer holidays, and for one thing, and no one in the neighborhood was aware that this was happening until just recently when it was discovered that this had happened.
Is that something that's required by administration to notify those residents?
We're just confirming the public hearing through the records. And we have something through that. So.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is not a question directly to you, but I just have a question if this should even be on the agenda. And I ask from this perspective, if you have a piece of land and it's zoned residential, and you have a home on that property and it's built to residential standards, you're good to go. If arbitrarily the city decides to rezone land to something else, C2 or whatever, commercial, you're not obligated to automatically upgrade that property to meet commercial standards. We now have, I believe, and I stand to be corrected through the city clerk, we have a residential building in a residential area. And it's a request by the owner to change the zoning. Can we do that legally? Or do they have to upgrade that building to commercial standards with proper firewalls and fire exits and all that kind of stuff. Because it's in the zoning bylaws there somewhere. So I wondered if it should even be on the agenda. Or do we have to, would the owner have to upgrade that building to meet the fire standards of a commercial building? All that kind of stuff. I just don't know.
I'll ask the city clerk.
So once their approvals from the municipal, once their approvals from the municipal development plan and then through the land use bylaw, they would have to apply for a development permit. And if Stephanie's in the back, nod or not, then they would have to require us a development permit. And if they are making changes to the property, they would be required to meet the zoning and the fire regulations.
So that's your question, Councilor?
If they get a development permit, they would, and they change the consistency of the building, they'd be required to meet the updated building codes, correct?
Can't hear.
She's not sure it's for the development officer.
Okay, we would have to get back from the answer from the development.
Okay.
We can get that answer from the next council. But there's no bylaw.
I know from past history that if you requested to upgrade your property from one residential to commercial, you had to meet the standards. But if the city decided to redistrict a whole section of the city, you don't necessarily, you're grandfathered in. But I stand to be corrected on that. I'm just asking, before you go through this whole process, and then the owner has to know what they have to do or not do if it gets approved.
But I think where we're at today is okay, the hearing to discuss it, and this will be circling back. But I see what you're saying, Councilor, is the question is the hearing in order, and I believe the hearing is in order based on the application. But
Fair enough.
What's that, we move forward from that point. Any other questions, Mr. Presenter? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now ask if anyone else wishes to speak opposed to the proposed bylaw. Not seeing anyone, I will now ask anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed bylaw. Please come forward. Good afternoon, please state your name for the record.
My name is Delia Morgan Tates.
Welcome.
I am the property owner of 5201 46th Street and the business owner of Walking on Water. I don't know if I can do this in 5 minutes, but I'm going to try. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background so you know who I am. I grew up in Wainwright. I grew up in a retail environmental store. My parents had a department store when I was young. It was always been my dream to have a business here in Lloydminster. So my passion is retail, yes, but it's more for people. And I have a slideshow here that will show a little bit of Walking on Water and what I'm all about. So about 5 years ago, before I had started Walking on Water, I started small. I started up in Wainwright, and I started trying product lines and figuring out what would actually sell. And working full time here in Lloydminster, I had many people come to me saying, "You got to bring what you have here." So working full time, I thought, how can I do this? How can I bring this dream that I have to Lloyd? And so with still working full time, I started trade shows. Lloyd in the area have great trade shows, so for me it was great because your overhead costs were low. I was able to bring the product line here. So I started trade shows, and then eventually I started in the School West. So this was my first time going to the city and getting a mobile vendor license. So my husband brought home an old school bus. I converted it into a traveling toy bus. And so I got a mobile vendor license from the city, and I would go to farmers markets, I'd go to Street Fest, Canada Day, and I think I got a few more here. So from there, back in 2017, so a year ago from now, I had tenants. So I own 5201 46th Street. So the last 5 years, I rented that property out as a rental income. And the tenants moved out in March of 2017. So the property was sitting vacant. And I knew I was surrounded by commercial, like to the like 3 different area sides of me, I was surrounded by commercial. So I thought about it, I knew I had this demand in Lloyd. I knew that I could bring these toys and I knew I could sell them because I had the experience of doing that through trade shows and through the bus. So I knew the demand was there, so I went to the city, and the girls from the development office, they were amazing to work with. They said, yeah, you can start with a minor home-based business. So I was still working full-time, and I asked for approval to open Wednesday to Friday, 5 to 9. So it wasn't full-time hours, it was just in the evenings. So I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on that because I feel the face of small business is changing, and coming here today, I want to advocate for every small business. And one of the biggest challenges of small business today is signing into long-term leases, is high rates for square footage downtown. And you know what, my dream has always been to be downtown, but to find the appropriate space, the size, for the amount of inventory I have, that is hard. I know it was suggested here that I do that, but it wasn't feasible. So I was working full-time, I got approval to do a minor home-based business in that location. From 5 to 9. So then I started to notice a demand. I was there over my lunch hours and I was putting out inventory, and I was like, people were coming to the door. And I was like, okay, well maybe there's more of a demand than I actually thought. So I went back to the city a second time and I said, is there any way that I can extend my hours and I think I have enough sales to hire a staff member? And they said, yes. Now you have to apply to do a major home-based business. So I paid the fees. Now I'm a home-based business major. So I've now allowed me to increase my hours at the store, hire one staff member, and this was my first day opening. I opened the day of parade. From there, I wanted to touch on the stats. So right now I'm open Monday to Friday, 10 till 6, Saturdays 10 to 4. I'm closed every Sunday, every holiday. So I wanted to touch on that because impacting that neighborhood, I am closed every evening. I'm not open. Every holiday and every Sunday I'm closed. And it's a child-friendly atmosphere. It's pulling in families and kids love it. So the impact on the neighborhood, I think I'm the best neighbor you could ask for. Here's just a few slides. I wanted to show you this because when you're a minor in a major home-based business, you have to abide by certain guidelines, and one of them is signage. So I've worked with the girls in the development department to make sure that I abided by the city's rules. So all I have for signage is what I have on the windows and a little A-frame sign. So I made sure I follow the... So in July of this year, I was approached by the city to rezone the property. I just want to read what the city had told me. My little home-based business has to be rezoned to accommodate its commercial use. They explained that my small business was now too large for a home-based business, and it is more suited to rezone the property to commercial. Also said that there needs to be parking for neighborhood impact, and I absolutely agree. That is why I'm willing to take down the garage in the back to have ample parking. And I know it was suggested to be downtown, and I thought about that before I came here. Allocating 6 parking stalls along the back of that property is going to give you way more space than if you were downtown. I just wanted to know quickly, I don't want to stay on it very long, is there was a parking issue out front of that store, out front of this place long before I opened. And my tenants couldn't park there. And it's mainly to do, yes, with the medical building, and it's more so staff that stay there, that are there for 8 hours a day. My customers are in for 15, 20 minutes max, and they're gone again. So the problem is that they're parked there for 8 hours a day. But that being said, I also wanted to say, as a business owner, it also helps my business having those businesses around me. I get a lot of foot traffic in because they're at the pharmacy, or they're at the community service building, or they're there for their child as a checkup. So we all help one another. I appreciate them being there, and I hope that me allowing 6 parking stalls along the back will help with that. So I had a decision to make. So the city came to me in July of 2018 and said, you gotta rezone this property or move, pretty much. So I thought, okay, well, let me look. So I looked downtown for a location, and the one that I did find was requiring a 3-year lease. A larger square footage, which I knew I didn't have the inventory to fill, And most, I guess that was just probably the norm, is 3 to 5 year lease. So as a small business owner, I'm in my first year of sales. I'm now starting to get a feel for comparing my sales to last year. And I felt trying to grow this business, I felt signing that was committing myself to something I didn't know. And I think that's what every single small business struggles with, is signing that lease, not knowing if the sales are going to be there to pay for that kind of overhead. So I thought, you know what, I am going to apply. I wanted the city to know that it's a $3,600 non-refundable fee to apply for this rezoning license, whether you approve it or not. So I applied, because for right now, I've heard this before, it's an incubator, a business incubator, and that's what I felt like I've been in that house, is I've been able to keep my square footage low. I've been able to keep my costs low and my overhead low, and yes, I do own the property, which helps. But I've been able to put the profits that I've made from that business back into the business. I've been able to grow without taking out a loan. I've been able to increase my customer base. I've been able to advertise. I've been able to bring something to the city that never was here before. And I think that for me, this was the next step, logical step, is to put this application in to rezone it. And the other thing I want to touch on is in this house, is that this is what makes me unique. This is what makes me competitive, is because I'm not a Walmart and I am not a big box store. What people love about this 1950s home, and I think Neil, my neighbor, had said heritage is important to him. It's the same hardwood floors in this home. I've kept the same archways in each room. And I think that if you ask any of my customers why they love it, it's because of an experience. I'm not selling toys, I'm selling an experience to the families of this city.
I hate to cut you off at that time.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
I've tried to be as gracious as we
Okay.
can from that perspective. Thank you for your presentation. Is there any questions? Councillor Torson.
I believe Councillor Monroe and I had the same question, but so did you live in this property?
No.
So I'd have to check with administration, but my understanding within our land use bylaw, and that may have changed in the 2016 land use bylaw, I'm not sure of that, says the requirements of a home-based business minor is that you live in the property. And I could be wrong, and I could have interpreted that wrong, but that's the way it reads to me. Other than that, I just want to say, I think you have a great business, and I think it's a great business model, and your story is really fantastic, and it's been interesting hearing and reading all the signs of support from other members of the community and other people who frequent your business, my wife being one of them. This is fairly specific. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. If, for example, the city said, no way, we can't change this and that requires you to move your business elsewhere, would it survive?
I'm not sure, it depends where you're asking me to, and I think
I'm not pointing you anywhere. I'm just saying if it couldn't be here anymore, would it survive in some function or form? You don't have to answer. That's fine.
Well, it'll survive, yeah. Well, you know what, I have the desire to take this off from where it was, and I believe it'll survive, whether that's in Lloydminster, whether that's in Wainwright, whether that's in Vermilion, where they support small business and they want to see it grow, and I hope that's what our city wants too. And I think we need to look at the faces of small business and say, why do they struggle? Why are they closing their doors? Do they have a suitable place that is affordable to keep going? But can I just touch on something? I never knew about the downtown transition zone until Natasha had told me, and I think that is something that our community needs to know about, is that I am part of the downtown transition zone. I am part of extending downtown, outward growth of the downtown core is what I read in there.
Yeah.
And there is no line. Serena had from the Chamber of Commerce said that. Who is drawing the line down 52nd Ave and saying I'm not part of downtown? To me, I'm part of downtown.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just solely reading, at the last meeting, I very much, you know, presented an opinion that was very much on the same side as yours, now reading the rules, and I'm still open-minded to hear other members of the public if they have any opinions on this matter between now and this actually coming to a vote on the bylaw. So very open-minded. And thank you for your presentation.
Councilor Monroe.
So Councilor Thorson did initially ask the part of the question that I wanted to address you with. I also recognize that you're very passionate about, and I've been to the store and I appreciate the store and I appreciate small business and I appreciate any economic growth in our community. This is a really tough one for me because I'm hearing the voices of people in the community that are in support, but also there are some concerns from different residents in regards to the parking, garbage cans being moved at different times from their residents in order for people to park, and different concerns that way. I am concerned with the fact that I don't know what our policy was, and maybe we've read into it wrong about having to reside in the location as well for the business. And I want to support it, but I'm also, at the same time, I want to support other economic development in other areas of our community, and I don't know if this is going against. I'm just worried about it setting a precedent for other individuals within our community to set up a home-based business, maybe not in the downtown, just off that downtown area, and it really hindering other parts of our community, which we've invested large amounts of money in currently, trying to do studies to redevelop other areas. And so I'm just worried about the precedent it's going to send and whether it's going to set the next person in motion to really deter from the downtown. So I really commend your passion and I respect it completely. So I am on the fence about it, and I just want to be open and honest in regards to that. So.
Questions?
Yeah, a couple statements and questions. And I think what I'm hearing about the parking is no different than the park we've heard about the entire downtown. We don't have ample parking, and I'm not sure entirely if it's because we live in Lloydminster, we should be able to park in front of the business, and when we go to Edmonton or Calgary, we're okay walking 5 blocks. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. The fact that you're adding parking, in my mind, will alleviate some of the problems. The piece for me, I guess, I'm not sure if we have any other businesses that would qualify in the same way you do in our transition zone, and have we asked them? And I guess because it is a transition zone, it seems kind of confounding in a way that we've created a zone where we're not going to allow people to develop it. So I'm struggling with this in terms of we have this bylaw and we're viewing it as an exception, yet prior council has said it's a development area. So I really don't have a good answer relative. I mean, the answer in my mind, based on the fact that we passed this, zoning, and we've asked you to apply for it, I'm kind of confused as to why we would be opposed to it. You've added to the parking. And I think if there are parking issues with other buildings around there, then perhaps it's something that could be entertained in a conversation with them. But they've also benefited you, as you've explained. And I recognize from a neighborhood perspective, though, is that if all of a sudden you wake up one day and find out, gosh, we've changed the zoning, that's another piece that we own, I guess, as a city in terms of changing these bylaws. And I'm not sure, we can't put that toothpaste back in the tube, it's done. So what we do going forward here, I think there are 2 parts. One is how we make sure our neighborhoods are aware of these changes that we make. And secondarily, I guess, we're asking, we're not telling it, I guess, which is, anyways, here we are trying to, in essence, the city's driving the bus on this one and not you so much. And I'm trying to figure this out.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Are you aware of any other requirements as far as changes that need to be made to change the zoning other than the signage and the parking? It's going to be accommodated?
That's all I'm aware of. It's just I had to accommodate for parking at 6 because it was based on the square footage of the property. And that was about it.
So my concern, I guess, is that, we had reference to the stairs, and I'm just thinking that, new businesses, is there a requirement around, handicap parking? We heard that often enough, and secondarily, I guess, access.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I was working with Natasha on, is that if access is from the back of the property, there is available access that they can use in the back entrance instead of the front. I mean, we can put, rails or whatever, so it's safer at the front, but it could be an opportunity to access it from the back because that's where the 6 parking stalls will be.
I'm just thinking of wheelchair access, and it's more than just even.
Yeah, it could be in the back, yeah.
Because I'm thinking as a business, I'm wondering, I would think that would be a requirement
And there's some questions I believe around that will have to come forward at a different time.
So I guess I'm wondering, do we have enough information today, even around our own bylaws, to act on this?
No, I think right now, today, I just want to remind council, we're here simply to gather information and ask questions strictly of those speaking against and for, and this will need to come back to council at a different time to deal with some of those questions. So, questions, Councilor Bruno?
Yeah, just that I think Council Torrenson's first.
Thanks.
Okay.
See how that's done?
As far as inside the home or business, sorry, is there still like a kitchen and everything? Like if you were to walk through, sure, there's shelving with toys, but is it still more or less a home within?
Yeah, it
Or
is.
is the law
And you know, I
regulations
haven't
big?
done anything to change that because I thought if council says no, it's gonna have to go back to a home.
Oh, okay.
So that has not changed. It looks like a
Okay.
kitchen. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if for some reason the land use is that you have to update and have some sort of a fire stuff in there and just say, these changes are gonna cost you $20,000, is that something that you're prepared to do? Because if we make those changes, you're gonna have to follow through with it, right?
I think that's only if you're redeveloping your property. When you go to remodel, you have to update to, when you do a certain level of modification, you have to update to code.
Yeah, I think, Councilor, we're going somewhere down the road that I think we're leaning away from the actual,
Yeah.
the use of, I could be wrong, but I look to the city clerk, I think those are be asked.
I'm afraid that if we make these changes and something has to happen and the owner decides that she can't follow through with that and is back here next month with the change, oh, can we go back to major home-based business? And we've already made that other change. I don't want us to have went through all of this and the situation arises that can't come to fruition. And I'm not meaning to, I'm just, if it was you or anybody in that position, I'm not trying to single you out particularly, but if it was anybody, I would ask the same question.
I'd like to ask the city clerk to comment.
We can gather all that information, get it back to council. Once it's in front of council then we'll have the fulsome information to make a decision.
Thank you.
I have one more question, and I'm not sure who's best to answer it, but my understanding is that the minor home-based business that you're currently operating is now required to change to a major-based business because of the change in the land zoning, and not because of any changes you've done in your business, but more because of the change in the land zoning.
So I started as a minor. It was
Yes.
based on my hours. Then I went to a
Okay.
major, and then now they're requiring me to go from a major to
Because of the hours?
because they said that I've exceeded the impact on the neighborhood. When I first started, I was just in the front 2 rooms. Now I have access of the whole house with my so.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will now call on anyone else who is affected by the proposed bylaw that wishes to speak. I would like to thank all presenters for their comments. I now declare the public hearing for bylaw 23-2018 closed at 2:37. I have a public hearing regarding bylaw 24-2018 amendments to the land use bylaw. I'd like to note before we begin that during the public hearing that we ask that you respect the views of everyone here and allow each person their time to speak without interruption. Each person wishing to speak has up to 5 minutes to make a presentation to council. If you wish to speak, please state your name for the record and whether you are in support or opposed to the proposed bylaw. When you are finished speaking, please remain at the center at the front, as council may wish to ask you questions. All discussions of council members, city staff, and delegation shall be directed to the chairperson. Any questions brought forward by the public which are not able to be addressed during this meeting will be done so at the next council meeting. Council will not debate this matter during the hearing, and the decision regarding whether or not to grant the bylaw further readings will be dealt with at a future public hearing. I declare the public hearing for bylaw 24-2018 amendments to the land use bylaw open at 2:38 p.m. I would ask the city clerk to confirm whether or not the public hearing has been advertised in accordance with the applicable legislation and summarize the purpose of the hearing.
I confirm that this public hearing has been advertised and notice has been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation. This public hearing was advertised in Meridian Source on September 27, 2018, and October 4, 2018. And the purpose of this public hearing is for bylaw 24-2018, being a proposed amendment to the land use bylaw.
By a show of hands, please let us know if you wish to speak to the proposed bylaw. As no members, I will now ask if any member wishes to come to speak forward. I will now ask if anyone wishes to speak who is opposed to the proposed bylaw on the list. I will now ask anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed bylaw to come forward. Not seeing any, I will now declare this public hearing for 24-2018 closed at 2:39 p.m. Returning to the agenda, 8.5, the Community Development Services. I'll look to the City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present the Fire Services Department presentation, I'll ask Chief Newton to present.
Good afternoon, Chief.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. Thank you for having me here to speak. Today, on behalf of administration, I'm going to be talking about the interim staffing model proposal. Administration's recommendation is that Council approve the implementation of the proposed interim staffing model for the Fire Services Department, and that Council direct administration to procure a third-party consultant to complete an operational review of the Lloydminster Fire Department for a maximum price of $50,000 plus GST. The current operating model has outstripped the ability for the Fire Services Department to continue to meet the needs of the community and is in need of investment and support. The proposed interim model will begin to alleviate some of the critical pressures currently facing the Fire Department, whilst administration brings forward a plan to Council regarding the long-term direction in the Fire Department staffing. The department has been involved in a multi-year redevelopment process. Current fire department leadership recognized that the fire department has fallen behind the growth of the city and that changes in the regulatory and industry accepted practices have embraced the need for change. This change management process started in response to extremely high turnover rates in the department's volunteer staff and unsustainable workloading of the full-time leadership group. The current focus of the fire department leadership team is to bring the Lloydminster Fire Department into alignment with occupational health and safety legislation in both Saskatchewan and Alberta, and this alignment is anchored to accepted fire protection standards and industry best practices. While there have been positive steps forward, the department does not have the capacity to resolve the identified issues without significant and ongoing investment. Administration is proposing the implementation of an interim staffing model that will see an additional 7 full-time positions added. One of these positions will be placed in management, while the others will be placed in operational. The additional management position will assist in the development of the fire department's programming, policy, and procedure development, and will be key in the development of long-term planning. All new operational positions will be scheduled to operate on a 24/7 continuous basis. The model will consist of a 4-crew rotation of 3 staff operating out of Fire Station 1. The 3 staff that are placed on a continuous basis will be both full-time and part-time. The purpose of the model is to add much-needed support into the department's operation to ensure safety of the community and staff. The operational model, while alleviating some pressures, is not meant to be a long-term solution to the fire department staffing. Having fire stations that is staffed on a continuous basis will improve the service delivery to the community and will allow for a guaranteed minimum amount of firefighters available to attend a call. Moving to a continuous staffing model will allow for administration to effectively manage overtime because current practices are adding to large amounts of overtime being accumulated. The proposed interim model will see staffing in both full-time and part-time, also known as paid on call, This is what is known as a composite style of staffing. The proposed model will, if nurtured, continue to serve the city well into the future. It is flexible in the fact that when adding more staffing capacity, and it will keep this interim proposal respectful of Council's long-term vision for the Lloydminster Fire Services Department. The proposed interim staffing model will add much-needed change management capacity to the department. It will allow additional time for administration to develop a long-term planning document that will provide decision makers with information to guide the growth of the department's staffing. Furthermore, the proposal and all subsequent plans that are created will support a healthy Lloydminster and will be linked to legislation and industry accepted best practices. Our options: that Council approve the implementation of the proposed interim staffing model for the Fire Services Department. 2, that Council direct administration to procure a third-party consultant to complete an operational review of the Lloydminster Fire Department for a maximum price of $50,000 plus GST. Number 3, that Council direct administration to gather further information to present at a future Council meeting. Okay. So, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here today to discuss this interim strategy for the Lloydminster Fire Department. This interim strategy really consists of 2 major pieces: modular staffing reorganization, as well an improved modern deployment strategy. This will make sure that we're more in alignment with accepted best practices. So we've been going through this process for quite a long time, and I've had a lot of our residents come and speak to me about what's the need for change. When we have a resident dial 911, we have an excellent amount of staff that come out and deal with the emergency, and they deal with it effectively. So these are really viable questions, but what a lot of our residents don't see is those growing requirements behind the scenes. Trying to maintain qualified staff is important for the fire department. The whole process started due to those large attrition rates. There's also been many changes in the legislation. Over time, legislation does change and generally increase in its rules. The training requirements, especially accepted by the industry as being mandatory, they're constantly growing, especially as the industry changes and risks change with more complex buildings being built in communities. Also, guaranteed minimum staffing. And of course, as our community grows, so does its demand for services on the fire department. So this interim strategy is we're looking to increase staffing to 11 full-time and 40 paid-on-call positions. 2 of those 11 will be placed in managerial roles, and then all the other ones will be moved to a 24/7 continuous staffing of 1 truck with 3 firefighters operating out of Fire Station 1. That crew will consist of 2 full-time and 1 paid-on-call a shift. And that's that 4 crew rotation. That is how we accomplish the 24/7 continuous staffing. In addition, our deployment will change to be a bit more complex and actually meet the risk profile of the calls that we're getting called to.
Chief, can I ask you a question while we're right here, just to keep it pertinent to where we are? So we're talking about 2 managerial positions within this scope of people. One of them's you. So we're at, just to make sure people are clear, it's adding 1 more managerial position to what's there, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So there are some benefits to our community, and these are important to highlight. We're looking at faster response times to our community. We will have that truck fully staffed all the time out of Station 1. There won't be that lag time anymore for our paid-on calls to leave their home, whether it's they're in bed or leave their employer, and come down to the fire station to get on an apparatus, then respond. With that, we'll be cutting about 4 or 5 minutes. We'll also, at every call, will have the proper equipment responding to every incident. This is important that every time we get called to an emergency, there is important and crucial life safety devices and proper equipped personnel at every emergency. We're also going to right size our response to emergencies. Again, based on the risk profile of that emergency, that is how we'll deploy resources. We're going to add capacity to meet those growing requirements we talked about earlier in the slideshow. And most importantly, our training capacity is going to increase. We know the success of our organization and any organization within the city. It's based on having well-trained, well-qualified staff that can meet the needs of our community. The costing. Our current model, we have one out-of-scope position or one manager, that is myself. We have one administrative position in training. He also has the portfolio of safety. We have 2 full-time firefighters. We have 40 paid-on-call firefighters. These expenditures equal 1.15 million every year. This interim strategy will consist of 2 out-of-scope positions, 2 managers, one again being myself. We'll keep that training safety. We're looking to increase to 8 full-time firefighters and having 40 paid-on-call firefighters behind that. Our expenditures are 2.19 million. So this is most important. If council approves this today, administration will begin working on implementing this staffing strategy. We'll also be procuring a third-party operational review. And then, of course, continue to build programs and services to support a healthy and viable Lloydminster. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Questions? Chief Newton. Councilor Blanchard.
So implementing the staffing change is really separate from the strategy or the $50,000 of doing the study, if you like, as well. So one is not necessarily contingent on the other.
Correct.
So, okay, just making sure. So that strategy then will be really looking at comparing us to other organizations, other cities and models they have, and ensuring the step beyond this interim step then would meet the requirements for the city in terms of making sure we're all safe, and also put us in line, if you like, with what the standards are for Canada overall.
Correct. This operational review will be looking at gathering information that is linked to industry accepted best practices, as well as our comparator organizations, and give us a long-term direction on our staffing, as well as a growth strategy on how to implement and maintain a sustainable fire service for our community.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Blanchard.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Chief. Just the clarity question. So the current model on costing has a $2,400 revenue. The interim model has a $25,000 revenue. Where are those revenues coming from?
So that revenue is based on everything that we can bill for in our fire bylaw. Sorry, I don't have the number on me right now. So things like charging for my inspections, charging for occupant loads that a lot of our licensed vendors have to have. In addition, charging for every false alarm that we do have within the city.
So basically taking that revenue from 2,400 to 25,000 means that those full-time people that are on are going to be out doing a lot more things during their shift?
Yes, correct. And that's part of this interim strategy, is starting to build processes and systems that help support that community. And a lot of those things will be things like inspections. So you don't have your fire chief out in the community solely doing every inspection.
So are we prepared to look at, I mean, we're doubling our expense. Let's put it out, that's what this says right now. Are we looking at, as the service come to administration and said, we need to really seriously consider our revenue streams for this to be viable? You know, billing for those car fires to SGI, billing the homeowners for a home fire, which is covered under their insurance. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of our current bylaw and what we can and can't charge for, but have we looked at this and are we bringing that forward to help offset some of this expense?
Yes, thank you, Councillor, and I should have brought that up. This should be a part of our operational review. Not only will it give us our implementation strategy, but it should also, as a part of that growth, it should give us different costing strategies on how the city can do it, whether we are a revenue-based department where we charge for every incident in order to pay for our fire services, or it comes out of tax revenue. But
We're effectively doubling the cost per household on this immediately for taxes. If it's 37 cents now, we're taking it up to just shy of 80 cents a household per day, basically, if my numbers are right, is what that was. But it's doubled, so I'm very interested in figuring out how we don't place the burden solely on the taxpayer of the city. Not that I'm against the change, but I like to look at this as well-rounded as possible.
correct, and in addition, the fire department needs to do a better job of advertising what we do and ensuring that residents do know that when there is improvements made to our fire protection system within our community, residents and business owners will generally see a savings on their insurance premiums.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Richard. Chief, just a question. Page 4 of your report. Continue to build programs and services to support a healthy, viable Lloydminster. Now, is there any capital required in this interim budget?
No, not as a part of this interim strategy. There is no direct capital cost. As we do know, though, if we do change our staffing model to a continuous basis, there will be different needs placed upon our infrastructure within our community. Currently, administration is doing that building assessment of fire station number 1. So this would be included as a part of their recommendation steps forward.
But this is in this number, this budget?
No,
Oh, no, that's what I meant. Sorry. There's no capital in this budget.
no.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Chief Newton, for your presentation. I kind of see it similar to the way Councilor Buckingham is. So this is a big step on our way towards a totally different style model of providing service, and I have the confidence that this is going to provide a higher level of service and maybe something closer to what a city of 30,000 people has. Am I happy that we're going to spend another $1 million? Not at all. Not at all happy that there's another $1 million that has to come from somewhere. But at the same time, if we can, achieve a higher standard, or if there's some feeling that the standard we're achieving right now is not high enough, then it's something that we have to do. And if the operational review can get us to a place that really helps support what that final standard looks like, then it absolutely is going to be money well spent, rather than throwing mud at the wall and see what sticks in terms of different models. So it'd be good to take some measures right now to improve our standards to get up to maybe a more acceptable level for a city of 30,000 people, and then use that review to really get a better picture of what the model ought to look like in the long term. Thank you.
Chief, as I read through this, I've had the opportunity to be in this community almost 14 years with you, and I don't remember seeing anything in a major review of the fire department. When was the last time that you're aware that the fire department and City of Lloydminster has had a review at this kind of level done?
We, at Fire Station 1, we have an old fire insurance underwriters report, I believe, in the 40s.
So
That would be the last
we
time.
haven't had a serious look at basically that number of years. That answers the question. Okay. Certainly I think that the comments are well said around the council table that they can't add a whole lot. It's a lot of money, but at the same token, I think the residents of our community are expecting to basically have fire protection. They expect the best fire protection that the city can afford, and that's what we've tried to strive for every service we provide. As good a service as we can provide with the money we have. It costs money, and it's a service that's required, and we certainly support the on-call as well as the full-time members that we have today. They answer the call, and I believe we'll be in National Fire Prevention Week this week. It would be a good time to mention it. We will see members of our fire department throughout the city this week and throughout the neighborhood. Last week, oh, my apologies. So you saw them last week, thank you. I know they were out and about, my apologies. From that perspective. Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Board of Administration, we vote in favor of this today. How quickly can we look at that fire fee bylaw? Because those that know me know that I know a thing or two about the potential revenues that do this. I do this for the department I'm on. I know what this can look like. How quickly can we look at it if we're going to go into an expenditure? Because for me, if we're going to do this, I need some kind of idea of when we're going to start to try and offset it a little bit, because we have the potential.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor. Ideally, we'd like to get a good handle on the operational review and get some of the suggestions out of that report for implementation in a new service level policy, as well as potential update to our fire bylaw within the community. Upon initial investigation, we feel that operational review would be about a 6 to 8 month process. Could we implement a update to the fire bylaw in prior to that document being completed? I think we can definitely look at it. Our hope would be to get it implemented fairly quickly.
Yeah, there's two things that I follow up with on that. The first one is I should have asked if that review was going to incorporate that, and I didn't. So we're saying that review is going to incorporate a possible fee structure?
Yeah, the intent of the operational review is to look at all aspects of the department, from both operational to revenue generation, our service level policies, our bylaws. It would review it all encompassing, for sure.
Yeah, the other thing that I'll say is that I know these gentlemen run hard for false alarms and all of that kind of stuff. So just like right now,
he's getting it
right now. So, you know, without going into all of the fees for a regular vehicle fire, a structure fire, that kind of thing, looking at a false alarm bylaw as a revenue as well, because I know how much it costs us as a city and how many calls these guys do for that.
Yeah, and I believe Jordan, Chief Newton, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but our current fire bylaw allows us to charge for that, and I think that's where he's proposing the increase revenue, is to actually start implementing that on a more regular basis, and then we would look at expanding that out to fees for service as we develop the new policy and bylaw going forward. Is that correct, Chief?
That's correct.
Because I know for my department what it costs, and I bet you it's a third of what it costs the city. So we're talking large numbers, and most of the public I don't think would really understand that, but it's a large number.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to His Worship's comments around when was the last time we did a major review of this department, and I think that's reflective of maybe some of the bylaws we have in place, and we do want to start moving this department in the right direction, and part of that is looking at how we offset some of the expenses, because our expenses are obviously increasing and will continue to increase as we set a staffing model that is going to meet industry standards and best practices.
I may be able to shed some light through the city clerk on the answer to your question, Councilor Buckingham. There is, based on the policy that's in play as of today. Sorry, city clerk.
Yeah, bylaw 25-2015 is the fire bylaw, and it allows so in excess of one call per year, 250 per false alarm call.
The question then becomes, I could have missed it. I haven't seen a revenue line this year that shows that we're actually enforcing that bylaw.
That's a very good question, Councilor.
It can be there all day long.
I think that's one that will be going back to administration. I think that message I've heard very clearly today, and I'm sure administration has as well, from that perspective, that we deal with bylaws continuously. And I'm going to look to our Councilor Baker, as he stated, if we're going to have a bylaw, we're going to enforce it. Otherwise, why is it written? So I think that's the challenge that's going to be sent back to administration, that you have a bylaw, let's put it into use. And I think people have to realize that there are services that come within the city, but when you extend, false alarms as an example, as a perfect example, when we start dispatching the fire truck and firemen every time someone has a false alarm, and it's a repeat, there is a cost to that.
It comes with a cost, it comes with apathy, it comes with all these also other alarms, right? You guys, so there's
There's
all
many-
invested.
There's many challenges. Any other questions for Chief Newton? Not seeing any, I'll look for direction from council regarding the interim staffing model proposal. Councilor Dietschy.
Move that council approve the implementation of proposed interim staffing model for the fire services department.
Seconded. Councilor Torson. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'll look to council for direction on the second recommendation. Councilor Dietschy.
Move that council direct administration to procure a third-party consultant to complete an operational review of the Lloydminster Fire Department for a maximum price of $50,000 plus GST.
Seconded. Councilor Torson. I have one question before I call the question. Can the administration have that money in budget, and they can find that money in the budget?
Yes.
Thank you, City Manager. All right. Any other questions? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Moving on to 8.5.2. To City Manager through to the
Thank you, Worship. To discuss 8.5.2, Lloydminster Facilities Corporation, I'll ask Joel Turcotte to come forward.
Good afternoon, Joel.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councilors. Today I'm here to talk about Facilities Corporation. The issue, Lloydminster Golf and Curling Center currently is operated by an internal board, called the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation, which includes, or is entirely internal City of Lloydminster staff and council. The facility has run at a deficit for a number of years. In 2017, the facility cost was $316,000. Additionally, Facilities Corporation owes the City of Lloydminster just over $1 million, which has occurred since 2010. Some background: as a result of the deficit, council approved funding for the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation Board to hire a consultant to conduct a full operational review of the corporation. Health Systems Group of Calgary, Alberta was the successful bidder, presented their findings at the May 28th regular council meeting. The Lloydminster Facility Corporation has since discussed the recommendations with the Health Systems Group, operational review and financial audit, and have decided on the following changes to put forward. 1, to contract out the food and beverage services. 2, to contract out the pro shop services. 3, contracting out curling ice operations. And 4, moving the golf course turf management within the City of Lloydminster operations. The corporation reviewed other options, and I will present those in the presentation coming up. In the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation recommendations report, it recommends the most financially responsible option. So options: the council dissolved the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation as of December 31st, 2018, and direct administration to contract food and beverage services, curling ice maintenance, and golf pro shop services out. In addition, council instruct administration to bring golf course turf management within the City of Lloydminster's operation. 2, the council requests administration to bring other operations forward. 3, the council direct administration to provide further information. Governance implication: Facilities Corporation bylaws will need to be repealed. Budget financial implication: if the recommendation is approved, administration estimates the budget deficit in 2019 to be $220,000. So one thing I do want to make sure I note, that we're called for to dissolve as of December 31st, 2020, so, or 2018, sorry. So nothing would change for that. We would stay status quo until that date. But I just wanted to make sure that that was well known. So moving on to the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation recommendations. Summary of proposed recommendation: that council dissolve the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation as of December 31st, 2018, and direct administration to contract food and beverage services, curling ice maintenance, and golf pro shop services out. In addition, council instruct administration to bring turf management within the City of Lloydminster operations. Contracting out the pro shop, so I'm going to go through each one here just to give an idea of how it'll look. There's an opportunity to contract the pro shop service to a third party. This is a trend by many municipalities own golf courses to contract the service out. The contract will appear, it'll be a 10-month contract, February to October, for a set fee which would include the fee to manage the golf operations. The fees would include staffing and operational expenses. Contractor is responsible for the purchasing of merchandise and with his or her own funds and will see the potential revenues from merchandise sales in the pro shop as well as golf lessons. The city would receive all other revenues from the pro shop, including green fees, membership, sponsorship, programming, car rentals, and anything else that regularly brings in revenue. The pro shop responsibilities include overseeing the operations of the driving range, pro shop, back shop, excluding turf management, responsibilities for selling memberships, green fees, cart rental, tournament, packages, bookings, tee times, etc. Responsible for programming all leagues, men's, ladies, juniors, and any other future leagues. Responsible for hiring staff to meet service levels, provide golf lessons to patrons, monthly reporting of all revenues, ensure all applicable city policies are adhered to. City of Lloydminster responsibilities would be to oversee the building expenses, which include capital upgrades, maintenance, and utilities, set the service level for the golf courses. Council will continue to set the price for fees, tournaments, memberships, green fees, those type of things. Our responsibility would be to create all policies and review monthly revenue statements for reconciliation. Other details, the successful contract will report to the Director of Recreation and Cultural Services. So this is something that we would have to tender out, and if approved, it would be something done this week. Building expenses. So consideration, building and plant will be the city responsibility and will be the responsibility of the Director of Recreation and Culture Services. Squash, racquetball court rentals will possibly be reduced to no fee, but will only be open when the building is open. May not be available during the winter months, morning and afternoon. Potential to look at programming leagues via city programming team for future additional revenue. The administrative assistant position would transfer to the Recreation and Culture Services team. Turf management, we'd be moving the turf management to city operations. It's a good fit for both the golf course and city. The turf supervisor position will remain as an out-of-scope position and provide an opportunity to hire an assistant or team lead, which would be in scope. Contracting or renting food and beverage services. The opportunity to contract out the entire food and beverage services would allow the city to step away from the business and work with a contractor who has strong knowledge of the industry. Food and beverage contract includes providing food and beverage as agreed with the schedule of the seasons, allow a provider to use the kitchen facility for outside catering opportunities, provide alcohol services to golf course, beer cart, as well as upstairs lounge, supply meals and beverages to all public functions, be an approved contractor by the health inspector, provide a Saskatchewan liquor license, carry appropriate amount of insurance. The city will be responsible for all capital building maintenance and setting service levels for both tournament and functions. Excuse me. Agreement with the Curling Association. The city would continue with the current agreement until April 2019. As the curling season has already started, the ice maintenance will be contracted out for the remaining of the season. The city will continue to negotiate with the Curling Association in respect to the lease rate, ice maintenance, and sponsorship. Financial under this, like I said, the total deficit under option 1 is $220,000. These are some of the organizational charts. Director of Recreation and Cultural Services would be who everybody reports to, with them in system to the side there. And then I would oversee the head ice technician, work with the food and beverage contractor, work with the building's employees, and then I also have the head golf professional contractor to work with them. Manager of Parks Green Spaces, this is where the supervisor of the golf course would go, and his team below. Option 2, as an alternative to administration proposed recommendation, Mayor and Council can consider option 2, which includes dissolving the Lloydminster Facility Corporation as of December 31st, contracting out the food and beverage services, honor the current agreement with the Curling Association for the 2018-19 curling season, and work with employee relations to move the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation turf management, curling, and pro shop staff within the City of Lloydminster operations. Pro Shop services within the City of Lloydminster's operation. Pro Shop employees, by and large, are mostly students. It is difficult to fill positions in late August, early September, when employees go back to school. So currently, both golf professionals pick up the slack when employees return to school, but within a unionized environment, pros may not be able to do this work. After canvassing other pro shops, the model they utilize is to have the golf pros and their staff run the operations. To do so otherwise may increase the cost. The pro shop services salaries, the City of Lloydminster would have a significant budget implication because current salaries of the pro shop employees are considerably lower in comparison to the City of Lloydminster salaries. It would be recommended that the pro shop have one head golf professional that is supervised by the manager of LGCC and one assistant golf professional that is supervised by the head golf pro. Golf merchandise revenue would continue to be the revenue of the City of Lloydminster. However, it does carry a risk to the city by having too much or old product in inventory year after year, thus potential losses to revenue. Building expenses, squash, racquetball, court rentals may need to be slightly reduced. Building plat will continue to be managed by the LGCC manager. The administrative assistant would continue to work solely for the manager of LGC, but may receive additional duties as they would be in-house. Turf management in-house, the current turf supervisor would remain out of scope and hire an assistant. Turf supervisor would be managed by the manager of LGCC. Contracting or renting out the food and beverage services, this is very the same. I don't know if you'd like me to repeat this or not, but it says the exact same as I stated before. The city will continue to know Curling Association. Once again, we have a contract with them. No matter what option I'm presented today, we are saying that we would honor that contract. Financials, the total estimate deficit under option 2 is estimated at $405,500. Organizational chart, so you can see the Director of Recreation and Culture, the manager of LGCC would be there with the admin assistants underneath the manager of LGCC to look after the food and beverage contractor, the head technician, building as they do right now, head golf professional would be there, and the golf course supervisor would be there. And just showing you that they changed there. Summary of option 3, as an alternative to administrative proposed recommendation, the council considered option 3, which includes to proceed with amendments to the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation bylaw. Changes reflected would include a new board of directors for the Facilities Corporation that includes individuals that use the facility, or could at least, contract out food and beverage services, and again, honor the current agreement with the Curling Association. Pro Shop Services, it is recommended that the Pro Shop Services have one head golf professional that is supervised by the manager of LGC and one assistant golf professional that is supervised by the head golf pro. Structure would be similar to what is already in place. Building, in order to maintain the city's asset in good operational condition, it is important that the City of Lloydminster continues to have insight towards the building, maintenance and upkeep. Due to the safety, the area of the most concern is the plant operations. One of the biggest challenges for the city will be to ensure that the building upkeep is being met so that the entire lifespan of the building is completed. The administrative assistant would continue to be part of the Facilities Corporation, supervised by the LGC manager, and will not take on additional city tasks. Turf management would continue. The current turf supervisor would remain out of scope and would still be hiring an assistant. And contracting food and beverage services, again, this is the same as the last 2 slides, so I'm not going to worry about going through it again. And the curling, as I said, we have an agreement with them in place, and we're going to work with them and hopefully go with that. The total estimate deficit under option 3 is $316,000. And again, the organization, so instead of the director, you'll see the board is there. So just kind of outlining the difference between schedules, the difference between option 1, 2, and 3. Option 1, again, $220,000. Option 2, $405,000. Option 3, $316,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Questions or comments, Council? Councilor Dutcher.
Well, so help me understand when you say contracting out curling ice operations. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so right now we hire the ice makers that do that, so we'd be just contracting them out. The curling season has already started, right now they are employees, and so we would just offer a contract to them to continue with this year.
So the overall cost may not change, but it'd just be a different model.
That's correct, the overall cost would not change.
Thank you.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Worship. Joel, scenario number 1, or plan number 1, the Director of Recreation and Cultural Services heading it up. Do you have time to do that?
Yes, I believe I do. I also have a massive team with me that we can work with, yes.
I got myself a little, looking at so many charts here, I'm not sure, but remember, this starts at, I don't know, I'm not a golfer, but 6 a.m. in the morning, and it goes till 10 a.m. at night in the summertime, or 9, and it's 7 days a week. And so you have a food and an ice and a golf professional, all contractors, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And the turf would be handled within the city.
The turf would move into parks.
Yeah, if we went that way. That's your plan, right?
That is correct, yes.
So, this is kind of a silly question maybe. Who's the boss when you're not there? Like, you gotta make sure these four contractors can get along. And one has the food services, one's got the pro shop, and then there's common areas. I don't know about that one, I'm sure you'll figure that out. There's the parking lots, all these things. Like, all of that, you haven't got there yet, I suppose, eh?
Well, within the contracts, they would be very detailed of our expectations.
Yeah.
And we'd make sure that they know under expectations. We'd also have probably weekly meetings to make sure that we're on the same page. There's going to, every contractor is going to depend on every other contractor, right? And so it's going to be very important that we have meetings and that we're all on the same page and that we move forward together for the best option of everybody.
As long as you're coming, it's a pretty big load.
Absolutely.
For the summer months, anyway, that's all I'm asking. And in terms of like someone comes in and they want to play golf, and I'm just trying to get this whole operation to my head, and they want to have a bar, and so they deal with each individual contractor, or how do you do that? They book through the city, and then they go, who do they talk to, like, who's their point of entry?
So are you talking about like a golf tournament?
Well, somebody wants to put on a big golf tournament. Who's the point of entry?
So that would be the pro shop contractor is going to be responsible for booking tournaments. Now, when meals are affected with tournaments, they're also going to have to meet with the contractor for the beverage. They'll probably meet with those two together. And that's where they have to have a good relationship and why expectations are going to have to be laid down very solidly.
But one point of entry is important.
Absolutely, which is why the golf pro would be doing all the booking of tournaments.
He would be the head contact? Oh,
Yes.
Pardon me, okay. That's because many years ago, they had a manager and then they didn't, and people had a struggle knowing who to talk to. That's why I'm asking.
Yep.
But you've got that covered, which is good. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Torson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have quite a bit of inside information and have been privy to a lot of the information up to this point, just being on the Facilities Court Board through the last year and having a lot of detailed looks at how it works right now. And that's one thing that I don't want overlooked, is if someone was to look back into the facility study, there's some sort of quasi-board management thing happening right now that is really unclear as to who's in charge right now. So this ideally helps solve some of that problem because right now, like on the board is myself, Councilor Monroe, Don Stang, Executive Manager, and then we have
Brooke
Fair. And those are all members currently of the board right now. And it's just, right now, it really is a city operation that has some other kind of structure to it that is just bizarre. But getting back to this presentation itself, you know, one of the things that I think is really, really important is if we choose to go down any route where something's being contracted out, because the city loses a degree of control in terms of ongoing day-to-day operations, we have to make our service standards very clear as to, you know, who, what, where, when type of things. But it's also really important that when we're getting, you know, RFPs back, that we're really assessing, you know, who's the best for the job. And low cost might not do us any favors in this scenario. You might get a low cost pro shop manager, but it might also mean no revenue in terms of green fees for the city for that reason. Or if you have a terrible restaurant scenario, well, that might mean lower tournaments, because you're not going to get the tournaments because you're not having the standard that the different groups are looking for to have a tournament. So we have to be really, really careful in terms of who we are choosing and making sure that they are meeting the standard that we're looking for, because we do lose that degree of control. You know, looking at them one after the other, I think what's important is that the city of Lloydminster is really focusing on ensuring that this recreational option is provided to people at a price that's reasonable, and it's not putting undue burden on taxpayers, because it's not necessarily an activity that everyone can afford to do at the prices that are out there. So the other thing that I think is important is, in all scenarios that I saw, the restaurant is being in all scenarios the restaurant is being contracted out. Well, I think that's important too, because I don't think it's fair or reasonable to any local restaurant owners in town that we have one that is being subsidized by property taxes, because if it runs a loss, then you just have the ability to top it up and everything's good, payroll goes all the same as it would before, regardless of the fact that we got a study that said that we only make, you know, 30% margins when they should be 75% margins. And it doesn't matter, because property taxes can cover the difference. And that's just not, it's not right and it's not fair. So, and I appreciate that that's the option in all three that we're looking at. As far as turf management, I can really see the fit as far as what we already do in terms of managing grass, and we have the people who can do the detailed level that's required at a golf course that's at a higher standard than your average park. And as far as curling, it's good to see that we're not, you know, hurting that relationship in any way with any of these options either. We are just continuing on business as usual, no matter what we're doing. And in any rate, we would have been looking at our lease and everything else and making sure that everyone's on the same page and we're not hurting a sport, because I think that would be, you know, one of the worst things we could do from a recreation providing perspective is to hurt any one of these recreation opportunities. So, you know, I maybe I've been speaking so long. So are we, you know, going, this is decision-making day, or is this first presentation to the public? This is decision-making day. That's what I thought. I'm definitely in favor of option one. I think there's some level of risk that comes with it, based on, you know, the standards as I talked about, but I trust management and administration to bring forward RFPs of the groups and individuals that meet that high level of standard at the right price. You know, we have to really be careful that everything else takes a hit if you don't get it right in the restaurant area and you don't get it right on the pro shop area. If you get the wrong person, then everything falls apart. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Monroe, Councillor Cunningham, and Councillor Jones.
So I just want to comment that I agree with everything that Councillor Thorson said, in the fact that we do really lose that sense of control going with option one. We do if we put in the strong requirements and our strong policies, and that's great. But at the same time, when we look at option two, in my own personal opinion, this is a recreational facility just like any other recreational facility within our community. This facility has the best cost recovery out of any recreational facility within Lloydminster. And every other recreational facility is completely, besides small amounts of restaurant, are run by the city. Although with option 2, we have to bring everybody in-house, just so the public's aware. Everybody comes in-house and they're become unionized. So to ever go back to option 1 is something that couldn't be visited, correct? But if we go with option 1, if we find out in 1 year's time that this really isn't working out, we do need more control, option 2 is always something that we can explore. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. So in that case, strictly because of the cost point, in this opinion for myself, I do support option 1 just because I believe that administration and management that are in those positions are fully capable of making sure that this organization, this facility is ran in the most efficient way and giving our public and their community the best resources possible for the sport. But I do also firmly believe that it is in our best interest as a city to really be the ones that are making the direction, making those decisions. And so if in 1 year's time we revisit this and we aren't getting the service that we expected that we'd be getting, I definitely think that we need to explore further into option number 2 down the line. But I do support number 1.
Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Councilor Monroe kind of leads to one of my questions. How long are we putting these contracts in place for? If we decide to go down option 1, are they 1 year terms, 2 year terms, or how we talk about that?
I think, we've internally talked about 3-year terms for the food and beverage, and 3 or 5 year terms for the pro shop. You want to make sure that you have something that's going to be attractive as well.
Yeah, I'm not coming to invest in this as a pro if I've got a 1 year contract when we're talking about reviewing it in a year, right? So we're looking at a couple of year option.
No, every contract will have some performance measures in it and will be reviewed on an annual basis, but you're absolutely correct. We would do a 3 to 5 year depending on the contract, would be the intent.
So that's good. The second part of that question was, we're going to maintain the curling contract as it sits now for level of service to the Curling Association. So if we dissolve the corporation December 31st, we're in the middle of the curling season, we still have an obligation to provide food, beverage, service, everything else January 1st to the Curling Association. So that becomes a part and parcel of the contractor's responsibility effective January 1. No matter what the contract for the rest of it says, from January till March 2019, they have to provide to the level that we have said we would do as a city. Correct?
That's correct on both food and beverage and the curling maintenance. We make sure we build that into our contract.
I just wanted to make sure that was good. Thanks.
Councilor Belchuk.
Thanks, Joel. A couple of things I think it's important. One is that when you look at organizations that are run by volunteers and board members, people often will say, I've done my time and move on. And I think, we had an example earlier today when we looked at people applying for exemption for taxation, which seemed to be one of the easiest things to do. And you have transitions and you begin to lose continuity. So to continue to expect to have volunteers take on a role in managing a multi-million-dollar operation, I think at times it wears thin and we can see some of the challenges we have. The other piece though for me that it's important I think is to keep in context is that the golf side of the operation was running quite well, in fact, and making money, which is contrary to many of the trends internationally, where in fact the usage is down, profits are down. So I think, that's important to keep in mind. My biggest concern, frankly, is more around the curling side of things, because I think we lose money, and in spite of saying yes, we lose money in all the other recreational parts of recreational facilities we have. I guess what I would like to see out of this process is to ensure that the steps we take and absolutely ensure that we're getting the maximum possible out of this, because if we continue to do it the same way we did before, we're going to get the exact same results, and we'll be back here again wondering why things haven't changed. So I guess that's a piece for me that I want to see. The contracting out of food and beverage services, I think it's a great idea, and for the exact reasons we've heard earlier here today. But I think, when I look at these pieces, there's well over half of the pieces are in place already, I think, that can allow our operations to work effectively. We have the turf management, we have people running the pro shop now. If they want to continue, they've demonstrated they can do the job and have run it well. And the curling will stay the same, all right? And so food and beverages, I think, we talked about improving it. So I like option 1.
Just a comment on the curling contract. The rationale around keeping it the same is there is an existing contract until the end of April. We have obligations to that. We didn't want to, and based on the timing of the report and this coming forward to council, we felt it was important to give them the stability through this curling season. We have had meetings with them in the past where we talked about different types of options, how that contract looks. Those conversations will begin again come spring, so they're prepared going into the curling season. We fully understand what that contract looks like, and in that case, we want to enter into a long-term agreement with the Curling Association as well. So there are some things, I think, from both sides, from the curling side and the city side, we can do to improve through the processes, and some of those recommendations are in the report. But those are conversations we're going to have with them come spring 2019.
Well, and I think the other part, there are grants available to upgrade quality of insulation and facilities and those kind of things. So then I don't know when the last time we had a look at that curling rink to determine if there was a possibility to upgrade the insulation so that we're not just cranking the power through, keep refrigeration units going full blast in there. So there's other pieces. I think, again, there are people that are way smarter than me and do that for their living, but I'm just thinking there are other possibilities that we can explore to look at offsetting some of the costs that we're directly responsible for as well.
Thank you.
And if I can add, just you mentioned Pro Shop, all these contracts would be tendered out publicly.
Yeah.
So we go through a bid format with those.
Yeah. No, sounds good.
In each of those contracts, there will be a clause written though that there can be termination prior to, correct?
It's usually about contracts.
Well, I know, but I'm just making sure, because if there, for some reason in 1 year's time, that this isn't working out, I want to be able to revisit it.
And it's both ways though, too, right?
Oh, no, absolutely, absolutely.
Ledge Services has a fairly strong contract that has options for the city and as well as the contract.
Thank you.
Well, now we've been around the table, I'll start on my list. Cart rental at the golf course. That was one area I didn't see where that was included in proposal 1, 2, or 3. Who would be responsible for renting the carts that initiate the original contract? Who would be responsible to manage the carts? Who's going to maintain the carts? Because you don't have much of a golf course without carts.
Currently, we own all the golf carts at the LGCC. So all the mowers, all the golf carts, all that stuff would transfer over to city-owned items and end up with fleet to make sure the mechanic. Well, as far as the renting of them would go through the Pro Shop, just like green fees, and the revenue would come over to the city of Winchester.
So it would be a city mechanic who was ever responsible for maintaining the golf equipment. Would also look after the carts and would have to be the golf pro or whoever else.
Currently, the mechanic over at the LGCC would be transferred.
Okay. So,
Worship, before you move on from carts, can I add to your cart questions?
certainly.
Just thought of it now. So our carts have sponsors on them. What happens in this scenario now is our internal sales guy that we have responsible for selling cart wraps and that kind of thing, revenue, the whole sponsorships, all of these types of things that are currently existing out there. That's another thing I didn't see, didn't think of until you brought that up.
Yeah, sponsorships would go over to the city of Woodminster, so I'm more than likely to have a conversation with our sponsorship team and get going on that.
So we maintain sponsorship. Right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I had the opportunity to attend a meeting late last week in Edmonton, or in Sherwood Park, with the County of Strathcona, and they actually contract out their food and beverage, so it wasn't, I was embarking on something new that chat with the folk, gentleman that ran, that operates the kitchen, he has the contract, and he says it's been working fairly well. So that was from the contractor side, so that was interesting. There's a couple things I want to make sure that the public is fully aware. We've talked a lot of numbers today. We've talked 2 sets of numbers. We've talked about the potential deficit to operate the golf course. And that deficit, I want to make sure people understand, has been there for some time. It is a public recreation facility in the Golf and Curling Center. And there's a discussion about $1 million that are outstanding. And I want to assure people that that money was spent in operations. We had the review done. We looked at the books from perspective, and that's why we went outside the city to do that, to ensure that it actually cost more to operate our city than what was brought to council at the time. And due to the ways and means that was operated, this will be eliminated by the dissolving of the Lloyd Golf and Curling the corporation, if that's the decision of council today. Will that $1 million come back to the city? No. That $1 million was spent on the operations in the city, on a city facility. I think that's very clear for people to understand. I want to just re-emphasize that because I don't, if the city is successful in the decision, whatever we move forward with in future years, if our deficit is less or they actually operate to a profit, that would be terrific. But simply stated, the golf course did not suck $1 million out of the city. It was $1 million that was invested in city operations. I do see a savings if we do dissolve the corporation today or start the process that we won't have a second set of books. I think that is where this whole $1 million came from, was when we operated two sets of businesses, one from the city and one from the corporation itself. I think that there's some huge savings to be realized there, as well as ensuring that we don't go down the same road again a second time. We've been given three options. Certainly option one has the least impact on the taxpayer, which I know most of us at this table, not all of us, as one of our first considerations. But at the same time, I want to ensure customer service, as you've mentioned, Councilman Monroe and the other council members. I think it's so important that we ensure, and we will look to administration, because as we know, we have 32,000 bosses in this city, and they will let us know if things aren't operating, so it will flow backwards through the process. But I know that I have total faith in the county, in the administration. You folks have worked hard, and you've seen the report. You were involved in it. The people at the golf course work hard every day at the curling center, and appreciate that. And as we said, it's not a money-making operation overall, but if we can lessen the impact of the taxpayers and provide quality service that they've come to know and trust, I think they have the faith in moving forward. Any other comments, Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Worship. Just, I'm going to correct the mayor for a minute, if I may.
Certainly, please.
It's not the golf club alone. It's golf, curling, and food services. Because we can't beat up on anybody.
No. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just to make sure that the press understands. And that $1 million was launched over, cost us over what, how many years?
I believe it was 10 years.
Yeah.
Seven.
Sorry.
7 years.
That's a 7-year. So you do the math and you can see where you're at. It's not quite as bad as you look at it in 1 year. It's quite a bit of money. I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you, Councilor. I think that anytime we talk $1 million, we will get people's attention and make sure it's set straight. Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? Thank you, Joel. Council for direction on 8.5.2. Looking for direction, policy. Councilor Torres. Councilor Monroe.
The council dissolved the Lloydminster Facility Corporation as of December 31st, 2018, and directed administration to contract food and beverage services, curling ice maintenance, and golf pro shop services out. In addition, council instructed administration to bring golf course turf management within the city of Lloydminster operations.
Seconder. Councilor Torres. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Joel. Moving back to the agenda, 8.5.3, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To discuss the river intake dam project, I'd like to first of all welcome our new senior manager of capital infrastructure, James Rogers, to our team, and he's going to take on his first presentation this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I've been sitting back there fretting that I'm going to call you Your Honor, so I've at least gotten that. So.
Thank you.
I'm here to talk to you about subject matter, the river intake dam design for consultant services award. The recommendation that Council approve the award of the river intake dam design project to Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions of Calgary, Alberta, for $181,000, $865 plus GST, and that the mayor and city clerk are authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. In addition, a 15% contingency allowance in the amount of $27,000 $279.75 to be funded through the approved capital budget. The total ask is for $209,144.75 plus GST. The issue right now is the current river intake dam sediments up with silt and sand, given the current configuration of the structure. The need for the deflector spur, which would help deflect the water around the current intake structure, would increase the velocity, helping scour the sand away, thus reducing the amount of operational costs to backflush the system and keep it operating smoothly. The background. So the original structure was designed in 1982, and construction was also initiated in 1982, with operation being started in 1984. The original capacity of that intake was about 90,000 cubic meters per day, and that was operating with a 2-pump system. Since the inception of that, the creation of that intake structure, sedimentation was noticed instantly. To alleviate that, an initial berm on the north side, I'll direct everybody's attention to the picture on the screen, was created to divert flow from the north side of the river to the south side to help with the scouring. That improved it a little bit, but this berm was extended further to the south in 1993. Sedimentation still occurs to this day, as we know. In 1997, a design of this deflector dam was completed. The project did go through to, I believe, tender. Bids were received, but the program was canceled at that time due to cost constraints. As I mentioned, the current full capacity of this intake structure is 90,000 cubic meters per day, and that is operating with a 2-pump system. Currently, we operate with a 1-pump system, and our maximum would be about 40,000 cubic meters per day. Once we surpass that 40,000 meters cubed per day, we will be intaking too much sand, which will further exacerbate the problem and could potentially cause some significant risks for the city of Lloydminster. That being a complete plug off of the system, which will require a significant program to backflush the line and get the city going. I believe the city has a reserve capacity of about 5 days worth of water. I haven't confirmed that, but if a major plug did occur, we could be flushing this thing out for longer than 5 days, so that's a fairly significant risk. Due to the complexity of this program, we did go out to a request for qualifications, and we got away from the pre-qualified bidders list on this due to the significance of this program working in the North Saskatchewan River and the sheer size and scale of this program. So this did go out on August 3rd, or was closed on August 3rd with 7 submissions brought back to the city. The submitted qualifications were evaluated on past experience of the company on relevant projects and the assigned personnel for each consultant. After these, from these 3 companies were selected, and a request for proposal was sent out for the actual scope of work and the consulting services. Those were received on September 6th, and they were evaluated on the following criteria: corporate and project team qualifications and experience, methodology and work plan, and of course the financial summary. Going through all of those, the evaluation came up with a total score of 84 out of 100% for wood, environment, and infrastructure solutions. Within their submission, the tentative start date for the project was November 1, 2018. or as soon as we can get going on this program, as it is a fairly significant program with a lot of different pieces that have to go into it. The project closeout for the consulting services for design is anticipated to be completed by May 1, 2019. Now that is going to be a moving target as the regulatory bodies, and it's going to be a very rigorous permitting process as we are on the Alberta side. And we will be working within the river. We'll have to work with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the DFO, Navigable Waters, and Alberta Environment. So there's a lot of players that we're going to have to touch with this one. Construction is anticipated in 2020, so we will not be proceeding with this in 2019. The goal with this program is to have a design in place, a tender in place that is shelf ready, have all the permits in place, and everything ready to go for construction. The options that we've presented we have three options. The first is that council approve the award of the River Intake Dam Design Project to Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions of Calgary, Alberta for $181,865 plus GST, and in addition approve a contingency allowance of up to 15% in the amount of $27,279.75 to be funded through the approved capital budget. I should mention that the River Intake Dam Design Project has a capital budget available of $250,000. So we are $209,144.75 of that. Second option is the council direct administration to bring forward more information to a subsequent council meeting and delay the award to push the start date of the project for the successful proponent later into the year or into 2019. And the third is that council direct administration to delay the acquisition of a consultant to complete the design. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Questions, comments? Councilor Baker.
Thank you very much, Katie. Your Worship, this is probably one of the trickiest projects that, if you know just a little bit about it, you could really get confused quick.
Yes.
And I'm one of them. But I was around when some of these other problems existed. And I know the spur didn't work. The original berm didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So, here's my question. I don't know what this consultant that we're recommending, is it wood consultant?
Wood, yes.
Yeah. But I just advise or request you have a real good look at the river from Hudson Bay to the waterhead up there in the mountains and see what other people are doing. Maybe you've done a lot, but it seems, and you say it in your report, nothing really worked.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have no idea why it doesn't work, but take your time, and if it costs an extra $100,000, come and tell us, because how many times are these consultants going to get paid and it doesn't work? Like, some out there somewhere is, this can't be the first one in North America.
That's right.
So,
Thank you.
I'm just asking to look twice as hard as you normally would, because it just goes on and on and on. And you know what? The water system is not going to go away. It's not like snow in the spring. This is there for the long haul. So, the question of $250,000, what is that for in your mind for that budget? Like, how would we come up with that budget without a design? Just to, it sounds low to me, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. As I'm fairly new on the job, I'll have to...
Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Councillor Baker, for the question. I will take that information and then I can provide it.
I don't even have to know. I'm sure your engineering team would look, but I just wondered if, like, when I read the report, I wondered.
So this is only to design. $250 just for the design.
This is purely for
Oh, yes, this is design work.
But the budget itself, you have a budget here somewhere, don't you?
No,
What did you say in here?
we had a budget at $250,000
To do this work.
What kind of money did we budget? Then let's put it that way.
We approved $250,000 in the 2018 capital budget to complete the engineering work on this project. And this project's coming in at $181,865. In future capital, whether it's
Those little
19
numbers help guys like me out when they're stuck in the report there, but
there'll be a cost to the project, more than likely a lot more significant than
oh,
250,000
yeah, sure.
in
Yeah, that was my
future
mistake.
in future capital
I'm
budgets.
just saying that I've watched the administration and Russell and consultants wrestle with the problem up there more than once, and I'm just suggesting take that extra step because you'll go crazy. You keep doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Baker. So one of the jobs that we are going to have the consultant do is review the design that was done in 1997, which is the wing dam or the diversion spur to increase the velocities past the intake. If they come back and that is not going to be a viable option, or they do not believe that it will work, or they have other solutions looking along the full length of the river, they will propose those and we will go down that road. So we are going to look at whatever we've done in the past, what we have, and what would be the best solution going forward.
Okay, thanks. Just trying to encourage you.
Yeah.
I'm right behind you, don't worry, my question's similar, Councilor Morrison.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is just around, just to be sure I'm clear on this, because we did a request for qualifications first, so we were actually searching out firms that, or we put out a bid to say, hey, are you qualified to do this type of thing? That already kind of filters out anyone that wouldn't be able to do the job in the first place, and then that would be why, on this one, let's say price is 45% of your RFP, because I always get concerned when you look at servicing and you overvalue something like price when you're on the service side, because low bid does not necessarily get you the service you were looking for at the end of the day. I just wanted to confirm that the 45% range used in this RFP was because of the fact, partially because of the fact that we had already filtered out anyone that wasn't qualified to do it.
That's correct.
Further to that, the 45% is part of our new purchasing procurement policy.
Okay.
And we're ensuring that the proponents that are bidding on this type of work do have the qualifications, experience to deliver a project like that, which is why it was broken into 2 stages. Once they got past the technical phase, so they're technically capable of delivering a project, it comes down to price and the other factors we have.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go fishing in the same area, it seems to be, because we've got a difference, and I guess my question is, Associated Engineering is a huge organization, Boulder Associates are a huge organization. Wood Environmental, I'm just not familiar with it from my past, but who were they, or do we have some background that you can just shed a little light, because I have the same concern. We've been down this road with consultants and consulting engineers, and I want to make sure for a difference of $200 or a couple $1,000, as Councilor Baker alluded to, we're not back at this one more time, because it's going to come back to haunt this council if we don't do it right. So,
Thank you, Mayor Hobbs, for the question. Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions is AMEC Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. They have since acquired or been acquired, I'm not too sure how it was, but they used to be formerly AMEC Environment and Infrastructure.
thank you. That answers the question. We're dealing with we've got 3 bids from 3 very reputable, known engineering firms that work across Canada. There's no question, I'm sure, that all 3 of them have been challenged by the North Saskatchewan River, because it's a high sedimentation loaded river. Doesn't matter where you are, and there's water intakes at PA, Battleford, Nelson, Edmonton, the list is going backwards, including our own. So hopefully these folks bring the knowledge and expertise, so that answers my question, gives me some reassurance, because I don't want to see us get caught down that road if we don't have to. Absolutely. Any other questions? All right, I'll look to council for direction. On 8.5.3,
Sure.
Councilor Baker. Take it.
Option number 1. The council approved the award of the river intake dam design project to Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions of Calgary, Alberta, for $181,865 plus GST. In addition, approve a contingency allowance up to 15%, amount of $27,279.75 to be funded to approved capital budget.
Oh, okay, slightly different here, Councilor Lopez. It's similar, but it's not exactly, so we'll go that way. Sorry, let me run that one more time.
Can I do this again?
You're very close.
Thank you very
The
much.
city clerk says we got close enough.
The question is, did I get the price right?
Oh, I think you did.
Okay, we're gonna read this all over again. Sounds the same to me. Council approved the award of the river dam intake design project, Wood Environment Infrastructure Solutions of Calgary, Alberta, $181,865 plus GST, and the mayor and mayor and city clerk are authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. In addition, a 15% contingency allowance in the amount of $27,279.75 to be funded to approved capital.
Second, please.
Did I approve that, Sam?
You got it, Councilor Thorson seconds it. Any further discussion or comments before going for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to take a moment and step away from this chair. I'm going to turn the chair over to Councilor Baker and temporarily dispose.
What are we doing?
You're on to eight.
No. I think so.
You're very good. Yep.
Pulls a quick one on me on that. Get up in this chair, don't we? I believe we're at 8.7.19, 2019 use of the budget survey. Which one? Yeah. And Chief of Staff. Oh, there's Leo.
Thank you, Council. So, as most of you at this table know, administration recently completed its annual municipal budget community engagement process, which provided residents and community stakeholders with a number of opportunities to learn about and provide input on our 2019 budget preparations. With support from the Finance Department, the communications team developed an online survey that was open from August 20th until September 14th. The survey was actively promoted throughout this 26-day period and ultimately garnered more than 500 completed responses. In addition to the survey, Council administration participated in a number of face-to-face budget engagement activities, including an informal jelly bean survey during the city's pancake breakfast on July 12th, a budget open house at the Legacy Center on September 5th, and a second budget engagement open house, also known as Your Voice Night, at the Service Sports Center on September 6th. Administration thanks council members for their active participation in this year's budget engagement process and for their commitment to creating opportunities for Lloydminster residents to engage in meaningful conversations around the budget. We hope the information presented today is of great value in your upcoming budget deliberations. Thank you, and I welcome any questions on that.
Any questions? Any questions over here?
Thank you, Councilor.
We're just to the discussion.
Okay. Questions or comments from members? Okay.
Thank you, Worship. My question is basically to probably the city manager regarding this stuff. Was there any big surprises for you in what you found in these results? Or whoever wants to take a stab at that, please do.
Result-wise, I can't speak to any major surprises in there, but what I was encouraged by through the process was the number of residents that did engage in the face-to-face opportunities, but also the survey netted what I would say is a pretty high ratio of comments per completed responses. So not only were people completing the the Q&A part of the survey, they were also providing us with some, in some cases, some pretty well thought out feedback and suggestions for our budgeting processes.
You're happy with the engagement overall? Or?
Yeah, I think it went pretty well. I think the two engagement open house events that we held, I would say the attendance and the participation at the Service Sports Center on the 6th was quite a bit higher, but both residents took advantage of both opportunities, and like I said, quite a few great comments through the online portion as well.
Key for this council, of course, is to have that engagement and that feedback. And that's the direction we've kind of given everybody. Knowing that, just because we're here, what would you do different? Do you see anything that you would change in this procedure next year to make it even better than it is now?
We've had some discussion around that now. I couldn't speak to anything specific at the moment, but obviously part of that, our annual process to look at what we could have done better next year, and we've already had some conversation with council about what maybe your thoughts or suggestions for changing the process next year, but we look forward to working with council to garner the strongest possible response we can next year.
No, I'll just finish mine by saying thanks to all the staff that put a pile of time into this, both during the 8 to 5 hours and then during the evenings when we were out there meeting with residents in the city, because it shows the teamwork and the dedication of everybody. So I thought when I saw everybody there, everybody was engaged, happy to be there, and it showed it all for me. So thanks to all the staff and that part of it.
Councilor Thorson.
I think Councilman Monroe is first.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge, I know all the hard work that goes into your communications department and all the staff that really puts in a lot of time and effort to creating these events. But the most important thing here is whether or not we have 100 people out or we have 2 people out, it's the opportunity that we did give for the community to be present, and whether or not they come out or not is their own choice, but we did have that opportunity for people to come out, whether it was in the summer, in good hours, or at the Legacy Center, or at the Service Sports Center, different places for people to go to, and those opportunities were all over Facebook, in the paper, and we did advertise well for them. So I commend that those avenues of communication were even put out there for them. So I guess at the end of the day for me is that if there are any communications that people weren't able to communicate to us, there is always our email and different accesses on the website that people have comments in as well. So, yeah.
I think it is worth noting too, our local media did a great job supporting with awareness through that engagement process.
Shout out to the local media.
Councilor Thorson, your turn.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't know if I have any questions left because, that was perfect, but there is one other thing. I was just curious, in the next run of this, I wonder if it's possible to take some of these things to a different step. So a lot of the comments around the service levels of, no plowing and street clearing seems to be a big priority. Is it within the realm of possibility that we could get a sliding scale of, what does that look like from a property tax perspective for every time it's done, so that maybe people have an understanding when decisions come up, and then does that change their opinion on whether or not we adjust a service standard or don't in the next upcoming budget? I just think that that's something that, maybe we've tried to communicate some of those different things, but, I'm open to hearing if there's still the appetite for some of the things that have been suggested, if we factor in cost, price, what that means elsewhere. Just something to think about is whether we can take some of those comments to another step to try and see whether or not the appetite for the different levels of services are still there with a cost attached to it.
Thank you, Councilor. I guess the one comment I wanted to share, thank you so much for the work that your team did and the support from the community as well as the media. It was, as I looked at the graphs, asking the question, are we looking for increased services, maintain, decrease? Overall, the services that we're providing seems to be well over 50% of the population we saw. The two that, as you mentioned, Councilor Thorson, the streets, and that was a fairly broad, as I was looking at it, the question. Thinking about streets and sidewalk services provided, we were on the increase, and it talked about directional signaling, traffic control, seasonal maintenance. So there's a fairly broad perspective. We know that we've all heard very well and clear from the residents, traffic is always a challenge, and we're just about to enter that second season after construction season in Canada, and it's the winter season. So we've had just a touch of it already, but certainly I think that's an area that people are expressed. And the other one, of course, is the public services, or pardon me, public safety. And that encompasses a broad perspective of the services that we provide through bylaw and police officers, the fire department, RCMP. I think people are very concerned about the safety in this community, and I think that is what as well we take as a council very seriously. Again, there's challenges in many fronts on that, but it was interesting to see the two that really jumped out at me in those two areas. But I think that with work, we'll get the streets fixed, we will continue to maintain them as best as we can. they would hopefully improve the traffic lights in a few places. So we'll get there. It's a process.
I just offer thanks as well for everybody who came out from the city administration and spent some time there. It was just fun having an opportunity to chat as well for us, get to know you folks a little better as well. But it's interesting the difference, this view, we feel like the responses that we got at service relative to the agility and survey over. There was definitely a strong recreational feel for everybody who's filling in the beans there at service versus the ones at the banquet breakfast, which are more distributed. Certainly. So, again, location is important, yet I don't know of any other location that we could get as many people to, again, sort of be present that we can tap into. But I would encourage colleagues, if we do this again this year, we need to be more aggressive in dragging people over. I went over and said, I need your help, get over here, come, go over to the meetings, do this. And they went over by and large, and we're more than willing to help out. So I think, that doing that gives them an opportunity to meet us, talk to us, know who we are, and they'll probably want to talk to us again down the street, especially when you're shopping in the grocery store or something like that. But again, I think just the more aggressive we are in terms of encouraging people as well is a big part of making that happen. So thank you.
I'll look to council for direction on 8.5. Councilor, back again.
The council accept the 2019 municipal budget survey results as information.
Seconder, Councilor Monroe. Any further comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Moving back to agenda item number 9, correspondence and information items. Nothing to add. Number 10, the mayor and council reports. It's been another busy week. I had the opportunity to be in Edmonton on Thursday and Friday to attend the Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeves Caucus meeting. We had the opportunity to come face to face with Minister Champagne, the new federal minister of infrastructure. And I introduced myself. He does know where Woodminster is. He knows we're on the radar, but again, I came away with an empty hand, but we continue to pursue that. But the next couple of weeks, we hold a lot of meetings. We'll be meeting the medium-sized mayors of Alberta this week in Beaumont. So the manager and I will be traveling to that. And next week, we'll be attending the Saskatchewan Mayors Caucus in Regina next week. So we'll certainly have an opportunity to be face-to-face with some other mayors and potentially some other politicians as we continue down this road of searching for grant funding and keeping the funding that we have from the provincial governments and everything else. Certainly, as we can expect cannabis in the Atlantic talk about next week again with the Alberta Mayors. Anyone else have any other items they'd like to raise at this time for their councilor reports? Councilor Forson.
Have we been back in council since we all went to AUMA?
Actually, this is the first time back.
Either way, all of us attended AUMA. I can tell you, I learned some, really interesting things about enterprise risk management, how to go about getting a program like that, and some good things on social media and how the city and the councilors should be using it. And overall, got to meet a lot of really great people who are, a lot of them dealing with the same kind of things that we are. So it was a great experience, I think, for all council again in attending that convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else?
Just the information. There were a couple sessions that really, for me, were very powerful. One is from Alberta Health Services around the opioid crisis. Certainly, as they use the graphs to demonstrate the numbers, on the X and Y axis, and it was a nice little gradual piece, I think about 2015 or something, and then they had to refocus because it was literally going off the charts and they had to rescale it every time, so it wasn't in ones and it was in tens, it was in hundreds in units, so that in order to be able to keep the graph intact on the chart that we were presenting. So, I know we have it in our community, but certainly other communities are feeling it way more than we are, they talked about some of the strategies that are available to them to help them out, and I'm not sure. I think it's a losing battle at this point, given the numbers. The other one was a session around communication and mediation, and I did get the slides and I forwarded them to all of you, and I don't know if I included you beyond, but please share with whoever you feel would appreciate them within our staff. But that was a really fascinating session around bringing people together and to use the community that had a population of 800, and I forgot the name, but they had 64 different community groups that were all trying to raise funds. In the end, what they realized that almost all of them sat on some other committee, pulled them together, they formed one committee, and what they were able to do was by using this process of working together and setting priorities, within a few years, they were able to actually achieve a heck of a lot more because they simply said, this is the #1 priority, this is #2, and we're literally just ticking them off the top and fundraising as a more cohesive unit. I know we've talked a bit about that in terms of our own community, in terms of some of the organizations we have, their ability to function and work together, and as well as getting some synergy out of having them work together in a much more cohesive manner and plan manner as well. So that one really had a lot of appeal. So I'm hoping they can look back at this, and certainly the author sent a note said, when can I come and present? Well, with dollar signs behind that, I said, I'm really busy right now. And but I think it's certainly what they have to offer is something that probably any community would benefit from. Whereas that was really the best session.
Anyone else want to comment? I think there was a lot of great presentations. Certainly, we are entering what they refer to as the red zone. We very much expect a provincial election in the province of Alberta by the end of May 2019. Certainly, AUMA is going to position themselves with some answers to the three political parties of Alberta that will be lining up at our door. Certainly, there's a lot of issues at the table from the perspective of AUMA that affect our municipality as every other municipality in Alberta, on the urban side. I also attended an IPD presentation, which was excellent. The City of Red Deer, the Catholic School Division of Red Deer, as well as Red Deer College have all used integrated project delivery in their last builds. And it's been very successful. They have some great experience to draw on, and they're quite willing to share that with us. So it's a really good insight going into our wastewater treatment plant when we get to that point. So certainly it was good to see. With that, I'd like to move on to item number 11. Any other matters?
I will just step out for this.
All right. Thank you, Council. Item 11.1 is in respect to a meeting I attended last week of the Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeves. I was fortunate enough to win a set of Oiler hockey tickets for, I believe, the November 18th game. But in consulting with the city clerk, the value of those tickets are in excess of $150. And certainly they're great seats that were provided by Strathcona County. I signed off on following their process to receive the tickets and so forth, but that was a legitimate draw. It was simply a door prize. But I would ask council to entertain a motion that those tickets be forwarded to the Health Gala this coming Friday night to raise money for the Lloydminster District Health Foundation for the project Sunrise. The city had been asked to contribute, and we said we were working on a policy to try and deal with this on a much broader scale. So we declined donating anything, but since these tickets have arrived and they have a set date, I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to raise some money for Sunrise, Project Sunrise. So I'd ask council for some direction on that.
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Baker, tickets be donated. Seconder? Sure. Councillor Donchuk. Any questions or comments?
Just a comment. I just have to say, I'm really proud of you, Gerald. I'm going to be honest. It's really easy for something like that to, oh, you know, I wanted it's a door prize, to get a little subjective with some of these things and try and rationalize ways that it's okay. But the fact that you really did follow the policy to a T when given the opportunity to, and finding a great way to.
I didn't want to get impeached.
There was a wahoo moment when I won them, and then when I sat down and just thought about it, I said, my goodness, I think depending on who I ask at city administration what they're worth, I know the city manager may not value them as high as some members of his executive, but it's all good, and the retail value is what the retail value is. So anyway, good job. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Certainly.
Thank you, Richard. Did you follow the policy? I'm just asking because does the policy actually say FCSS or discretion of council? Just because I want to make sure.
I'll ask the city clerk to comment.
I
policy says, gifts shall be disposed of in the following manner: donated to the Lloydminster Family and Community Support Services unless directed otherwise by council.
Thank you.
I had a chat with the city clerk this morning, coming back, and just to be sure, because I wanted to make sure we do this properly. So we have a motion on the floor. Any other questions before I call for it? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Buckingham, if you, so I invite Councilor Monroe back in. Moving on to the agenda, item number 12, inquiries from the media.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are media requests for yourself, Mayor Alders, as well as Councilors Morrison and Buckingham.
I will look to council for direction on a recess. Councilor Buckingham, seconded by Councilor Monroe. All in favor? Carried.